Boom. What's up, guys? We're live. So we're actually early for once. I want to surprise you guys. You guys always expect me to start late, so this time we're going to start early. We got Zach joining us. So Zach was the person that we were supposed to have on yesterday, but he didn't flake. It was a miscommunication with the time. And also, he couldn't contact me because my TikTok account was banned. So I'm glad we can make it happen today. Yeah, man. So let's kick it off with a little introduction. Just give I don't know, maybe like a 20-second background about who you are so people have an idea. And then we can get into like all the disagreements you have with my content.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Zach from Seattle. I am honestly just another guy trying to make things work in this world. Not a big creator. Just happen to be an opinionated old man that's got a lot to say.
I feel like every old man is opinionated. There's no such thing as a non-opinionated old man. That doesn't happen.
I say I'm old, but I'm not that old. Shit, I'm only 41. Let's go.
Okay, yeah, that's not that old. Okay, cool. So let's start off. The best way to do this, the way I always do it, is we just go through whatever you disagree with me, we discuss it, and then when we're done with that, we move on to the next thing, and we just go one at a time. So yeah, just outline it. What was the first big disagreement you had with me?
First thing that I saw, and it was the first video of yours that I'd ever seen on TikTok, was one you were talking about what to do when a girl says no when you ask for her phone number.
Right.
And that struck a chord for me, because again, as a 41-year-old, I've seen it, done it. I've played the games. Yes, I will admit that. Cool. Younger me did a lot of goofy shit, but as I'm older, right, and I see that the landscape has changed, right. The one thing that stuck out for me with that message is, while I understand it, right, I understand that there's this need to be persistent. There's this need to show a high level of interest, right, and taking no might squash that. However, given the audience, especially on TikTok, right, the age range of the people that are exposed to content like that, it sets a dangerous precedent, right? At least in my opinion, because if you start with no to a phone number, right? Let's say you meet somebody, you ask for their phone number, they say no. You start with that and you keep pressing it, right? That phone number exchange reluctantly then turns into, let me take you on a date. Again, possible reluctance, right? You keep pressing, you keep pressing, you keep pressing. You don't hear no, right? You don't listen to that boundary. Again, you're setting up this sense of entitlement in a dangerous situation, in that if you can't take no from somebody and just respect the fact that that's it, right? That's no. How much further is somebody willing to push that no, right? If it's no to a phone number and then you get it, it's no to a date and then you go. Are you on that date with some expectation of some end result that it's going to end in a man getting what he wants? What happens if that woman says no, right? I see that and I'm like, if I hear no, it's a no. I mean, that's it, right? Cool. But an 18-year-old hearing that and then here's what you do if they say no, right? How much are they willing to test that theory in the next steps? That was my issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point. Let's play the video in question so everyone knows what we're talking about. So I got pulled up right here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's start from the beginning.
Say this if a girl does not want to give you her number. So this works really well. I'm talking to this chick on Tinder. I'm like, do you have WhatsApp? She's like, I do, but I feel more comfortable using Instagram. Now, a lot of guys might be tempted to just go for the Instagram. The problem is that if she's an attractive girl, she has hundreds of guys DMing her, and you just get lost in her sea of DMs. So I say this. I got my G account hacked a few weeks ago, so that's a no-go. If you wind up hating me, you could always block me or something, LOL, right? And she says, that's a good point you made there. I said, I have many good points. Wink emoji. She's like, I can see that, lol. So number, and she gives me a number. So again, what you're doing is you're logically reassuring her, hey, I get it. I understand that you might be a little weary, but if you hate me that much, you can always block me. It makes logical sense. It makes some.
That's basically just the video. So yeah, I don't see this video as pushing past a no. I see this video as a girl saying, oh, I don't know, I want to talk on Instagram, and you having a good counterexample and saying, oh, well, why don't we text instead? I don't see this video as pushing past no. She never actually says the word no. She never says any synonym for no. She just says, I prefer to talk on Instagram.
Sure. But the idea that if she's an attractive woman, she's going to have other people in her DMs, fine.
That's right? A statement of fact, yeah.
Okay, cool. But obviously there was a boundary. She said, I'm not comfortable. I'm more comfortable talking on Instagram, because she doesn't know you from Adam, right? And there's a lot that somebody can do with a phone number, right? It's not just a phone call. It's not just a text. There's a lot that somebody can do. The wrong somebody, right? And I'm not saying that I'm not making accusations, not saying that is your intent to do something dangerous, but other people may see that, right? And that was my issue. It's not that was your point, right? I understand that. I see that. Grown ass man, I understand that. Somebody else who may not might think that, okay, well, I didn't like the way she said no to getting my phone number. Let me keep pushing, right? Because what if she says no again, right? What if, she's like, oh, good point, but I'm still not comfortable. Then you keep pressing. And we see that a lot, right?
None of that happened in the video, right?
No, I'm just saying these are hypothetical situations that could, right? Because if somebody says no, I mean, you see it all the time, right? You go to a club and you see videos of it all the time. You go to a club, some guy is trying to talk to a girl. She says she's not interested. She's not comfortable. He gets upset, right? Because he doesn't like to hear no. So he gets upset. He throws a drink on her, punches her in the face. We see it all the time. I mean, there are countless videos. Go, do a search. And it's those individuals who are like, oh, well, here's a craftier way, right? This guy over here, this Alex, he's, this guy knows what he's talking about. Here's a craftier way for me to get past no. It's no to a phone number. It's no to a date. It's no to something else. In my opinion, it's extremely dangerous to push stuff like that. What I would do, and this is me, if I hear no, I'm not comfortable, cool, thank you, have a great day. I'm done pushing it. Call me what you will on that, but that's how I was raised. That's how I was brought up. That's what I've learned. No means no, right? At the end of the day. And if she finds interest, because now we've got this thread on Instagram, right? If she finds interest next week, and she's like, hey, maybe. It's her choice. I didn't push that.
So, okay. So let me ask you, I mean, I see the point you're trying to get at. Let me, I guess, kind of try to feel out where you stand on this. So, okay, let's say you and I were talking about doing a debate, right? And
Sure.
You're like, I'm like, hey man, so I have a YouTube live. Here's the link. And you're like, oh, I would prefer to do this on TikTok. And then I say, oh man, like actually YouTube live is a lot easier because we can use our computers. If you want to still use TikTok, maybe you can mirror it on your phone. Would that be me going too far in our discussion?
No, because it's a different level of interest, right? Because if you're talking to a woman, you're asking for her phone number, right? You want to get to know her for other reasons. You're not wanting to invite her to a debate, right? You're wanting to invite her to dinner and after, right? I mean, that's the idea, right? That's the whole idea behind dating in general, is to meet somebody, make a connection, and ultimately proceed in that relationship, find a physical connection, do what people do, right?
Okay, let me rephrase the question then in a way that makes more sense. Let's say I'm talking to a girl, right? And we're gonna go on a date. We're trying to set up a date. I say, hey, there's this great bar that I know near my house, and they, let's meet there at 9 p.m. And she says, oh, I'd rather meet at this other bar that's near me, right? And then I say, oh, but this bar has a really good wing special. So if you like wings, we can get like a lot of good food there. And she says, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'll meet you there. Would that be going too far?
No, because you're creating a compromise, right? And I see that. But again, right, it was the video, right? And the what to do if a girl doesn't want to give you her number, right? How it was set up. Again, somebody who doesn't understand, somebody younger, right? an 18-year-old me, for example, right? If I were an 18-year-old and I saw that, I'm like, okay, cool. What else can I do?
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like the
That's-
analogy, the last, go ahead.
That's where I'm at on it. That's it, right? It's how much further are people willing to push that no? And that's the dangerous part.
I mean, you can make the argument about anything. You can make the argument with the analogy I gave earlier about, okay, you said it's okay for the guy if the girl says, oh, I'd rather meet at this bar, to be like, well, actually this bar has a good wing special. Give her a reason, right? Well, that guy could take it a lot further too. He could be like, the girl could be like, well, no, I still want to meet at that bar. And the guy could be like, come on. So anything can be taken too far. I don't think there's, because if we're following this logic that anything that can be taken too far is wrong, then there can't even be any content on the internet, because you can take any video and take it too far. So we have to look at the video at hand, not possibilities that the creator doesn't suggest. So I guess my confusion is this: in the example I gave about meeting at a bar, you're okay with that. So in this situation, basically what's happening is the girl saying, I prefer talking on Instagram, and what you're doing is you're giving her logical reason why texting is bad, or saying, oh, okay, well, I can't actually talk on Instagram for whatever reason. Let's text instead. If you don't like me, you can block my number. So all you're doing is you're giving her a logical reason. And then, as you see in this example, the girl agrees with the logic. It's not like she says, oh, that makes no sense. She says, oh, that makes total sense. Here's my number. So the logic makes sense for the girl. Sure. So I don't see how that's like, if she's an adult, how that's me like being pushy or violating her consent in any way. I'm just giving her a counter argument like I did in the bar example.
Sure. But the bar situation, right? If you say, hey, let's meet at this bar. And she's like, no, I prefer this one, right? You're meeting, okay? She decides to go. Obviously, she's going to get there on her own, right? She can leave, right? Exchanging a phone number, again, is more personal information. Instagram, cool. It's not entirely personal.
But you don't think meeting up is meeting up is less personal than exchanging phone numbers?
No, I mean it's another personal aspect, right? But she can bail, he can bail, right? But a phone number, right? You can find out a lot about a person with their phone number. Okay, you have their phone number, you can look up their address, you can look up a lot of information on this person. Again, the wrong person.
Sure.
Don't do that, right? So to ask for information that she's not comfortable giving, right, and pushing it and saying, but I prefer this. I prefer it. Sure, she may have said yes in that example, right? But what if she would have said no? What if she would have said, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I want to continue talking on Instagram, and that's that. Then what? Then what is the response?
Well, then I would personally just unmatch her and move on, because at that point I figure out we're not compatible. But none of that happened in the video. In the video, the girl made her own decision as an adult to give out her number. Right. So she could have, if she's not comfortable at that point, still say no. She could be like, sorry, I'm just not comfortable with it. And that's the end of that. So
but it's the general idea, right? It's the general idea in the sense of entitlement that comes with that type of conversation, where you're trying to pose this logical counter, right? Which I understand. Yes, it does make more sense. Sure. But again, the wrong person is going to look at that information, misconstrue it. And again, how much further can they push? And that, again, was the issue. I've watched some of your other videos, and some of them I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I don't, it doesn't pertain to me, right? When I look at content on TikTok, some of it pertains to me, some of it doesn't. And what sticks. What doesn't, I move past it, right? But some of your videos, yes, I will say that. Oh, yeah, that's a good point, right? Especially somebody like me. Shit, I'm recently divorced. I'm new to the whole,
Oh man, you could use my content more than anyone.
Not really, but
I definitely think so. Yeah.
But it's
get back on the scene.
I mean, you've got this, and it's not just you, right? There are a lot, and there are some that are a lot worse. There are some that take that whole idea to the extreme. I won't say any names. You've probably seen them. They've been blasted by countless people. I won't name names, but there are those that have that same kind of idea where it's like, don't take no for an answer, right? Here's what you do if she says no. Here's what you do. To back somebody into a corner when they say no is an immediate violation of a boundary that they have set, right? A boundary isn't one that's supposed to be flexed if you come with a logical explanation, right? If somebody sets a boundary, that is a boundary. You can't, right? If they say no, then it's no. Right? And that goes with phone number exchanges, that goes with dating, that goes with sexual encounters, that goes with anything. If somebody says no to you because they're not comfortable, respect that no, because that's their boundary.
Yeah, I mean, no, I agree with you. Violating consent is not a good idea for a variety of reasons, but isn't that a little bit of a straw man argument because none of that actually happens in the video? Like the video isn't about, there's nothing in the video about pushing a girl in the corner or badgering her or harassing her until she gives in. It's literally giving a counter perspective when a girl would rather talk on Instagram. Exactly, like it's literally exactly the same as in the bar analogy. The girl's like, "Oh, I prefer to go to this bar," and then you give her give her your perspective, right? And then you treat her like an adult, and she, at that point, she can decide yes or no. Sure. I agree with you. If I had asked her like 5 times, I kept badgering her, then you would be fully within your rights to say that's like violating boundaries. But that's not what happened in the video.
No, but that first statement, right? That first statement again to somebody who. And I have to think hypothetically because I didn't look at it in the way that I'm thinking that somebody might, right? I looked at it completely from the outside thinking this could be a bad thing, right? Because of that initial statement. What to do when a girl won't give you her phone number.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the title of the video, right?
So right. Sure.
We have to make the title something people click on.
But that's where
I can't make the title like what to do if the girl would rather talk on Instagram, but you rather talk over text, and she says that like that. That's not a title.
Sure, a less mature person may misunderstand the intent, right? But that was my point. You're again. I went through to make sure that I wasn't just wrong, right? Because I mean I'm okay with being wrong. I'm okay with learning. Cool. And I understand your perspective on it. And I understand that it was not in the video, right? The content that you shared was not any further than, okay, yeah, you're right. And she agrees. But again, there's this element of boundary that was pushed. The boundary was pushed, right? You look
in the video or potentially by someone misinterpreting it?
Boundary was pushed by you in the video, right? Because the video was, no, I prefer to talk over Instagram. It was like, well, you could block me. You could do this. You're basically saying, say yes to this one, but you can say no later.
Well, no, what you're doing is you're giving her a logical argument why texting is not as bad. This would be like if you're trying to talk to a girl on the phone. She's like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to get stuck on like a really long conversation. You're like, oh, well, we'll only talk for 5 minutes, right? You're giving her a logical reason to alleviate her concern. Now, assumingly her concern with giving a phone number is the guy's going to be weird or creepy or he's going to keep blowing up her phone. Sure. That's most likely the concern that most girls have. So exactly. You're alleviating that concern. It would be the same thing if you invite a girl on a date and she's like, oh, I don't want to be out too late. And you're like, okay, no worries. We can go out and I'll just have you home by 11, right? That's not pushing her boundaries. That's just giving her a counter perspective that alleviates her issue. But
when you look at it, right, if she says, I'm more comfortable doing X, and it was, well, we could try this and you can block me or you can delete it. You're giving her more for you, right? You're calling it a logical
You're giving her reasons. Yeah.
But to say no, right? If say yes now, but you can say no later, right? What if it doesn't, right? What if she does say yes, right? She takes your phone number, you start exchanging, right? And she blocks you, right? And again, I'm saying you, but the collective you, right? She blocks somebody, right? But that somebody now has her phone number, but can also look up her address. He didn't like getting blocked, right? So the counter argument or the options that were given are then pushed again, right? Because he didn't like getting blocked, so now he's upset. So he's
But the thing is that
the point.
We can't judge something based on a hypothetical what if that never happened. Because hypothetically speaking, you could find her personal information through her Instagram and harass her and stalk her. Hypothetically speaking, the girl could just agree to give you the phone number, and you could harass her that way. So hypothetically speaking, you could harass a girl in any situation, right? That could happen whether it's on Instagram, over text, right? That could happen regardless of anything in this video. But that's not what we're operating on. Like, we're operating on like what actually happened.
Right. No, I
could hypothetically in an extreme situation happen, because any type of dating advice could be taken to the extreme. Like anything as simple as, hey, do you want to go on a date with me? Like something so straightforward. The girl says yes. Well, hypothetically speaking, the guy could kidnap and rape her.
Sure.
Right? That could happen. So what's the solution? Guys don't ask girls on dates. Like, what's the solution? Just because someone could hypothetically happen.
Right. But again, I think for me, right, again, it's somebody says no, right? It's not, well, it's no now, but let me give you 17 different options that you can
First of all,
explore.
to be clear, she never said no.
I'm not comfortable is a no.
Well, she didn't say that either. She said, I'd feel more comfortable on Instagram.
Sure. I'd feel more comfortable. That's her saying, this is my boundary for me.
I prefer Instagram.
Sure. I prefer. That's a boundary that she's setting, right? And boundaries that we set are not necessarily for other people; they're for ourselves, right? If I set a boundary, right? Let's say it's me, right? Somebody says, "Hey, let me get your phone number." No, I'm not comfortable with that. Here's another method, right? That's a boundary for me. Don't cross it, right? To cross it is negating that boundary, right? To say, here's more options. You can block me. You can delete it. You're cutting through the boundary with logic, right? Which, again, I understand what you're saying. I understand the intent. Somebody else may not, because somebody else may say, well, she said no, but then she said yes. How many more times can that happen? So we have to look at it from that regard, because far too often, right, women are looked at as objects. Women are looked at as a goal, right? And we got to break that, right? We have to be able to break that. Yes, dating's funky, right? You're going to meet people, cool. But again, we have to understand that a boundary of I'm more comfortable with X is essentially a no.
Do you acknowledge that there's a difference between a boundary and a preference?
No.
So no. So for example, let's say you and I are we're friends and we're going out for food, and I'm like, yo, where do you want to go for dinner? And you're like, oh, I prefer we get some wings. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm really in the mood for some Mexican food. Like, am I violating a boundary?
No, because that's a discussion that you're having about food, right? But if a woman says to a man that she doesn't know,
I prefer we get tacos or whatever. You said I prefer we get whatever.
Right, sure. But then it's on me to make that choice, right?
And that's exactly what happened here. She's like, I prefer we talk on Instagram. I'm like, oh, well, I prefer we text. And then she made that decision as an adult to give me the number.
Again, that situation, yes. But how many times does it turn from no to let me do this, let me do this, let me do this? That's the point, right?
Okay.
How much further can it go?
So it sounds like there's two potential issues that you have, right? And I want to try to understand this better. So the first issue, which it sounds like it's no longer really an issue, is the potential that in this example, a boundary was being violated. The second issue is that someone could misinterpret it and violate boundaries, right? So it's two different things. One is the content at hand, and one is the potential for misinterpretation.
Right. And my issue was not with the content at hand.
Okay.
Right. My issue was not with the content at hand, because I understood it.
Okay, so you're acknowledging that the content at hand doesn't violate boundaries, but it could be potentially misinterpreted to violate boundaries.
Initially, it did, right? Because you said, or she said, I'm more comfortable with X, and you said here, right? She made that choice. Cool, but somebody else may see that, right? And say, well, if I can push that, what else can I push? Right? That's the issue.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I get this straight. So there's no issue with the actual content as it is. The issue with the potential for someone to abuse it. Is that correct?
The overall, there's not a huge issue, right? I'm not comfortable with how it went down. Personally, I'm not comfortable with somebody saying, I'm not comfortable with this, and you're saying, well, you can delete it later. So for me, I was uncomfortable with that. The content itself, I don't have an issue because I understand the intent. I was uncomfortable.
Okay, but I think that maybe if you kind of revisit this, like think about the example I gave where I said that you're talking to a girl. She says, you say, oh, let's get drinks at this bar. She says, oh, I prefer this other bar. And then you give her a reason why the bar that you suggested is better. Like, oh, well, this bar has a good wing special, right? Just because a girl says, I prefer that place doesn't mean you have to go there, right? You are entitled to your own opinion, right? So you give her a logical reason why, the bar that you suggested initially was better. And then she agrees to it. And you said that wasn't problematic.
No, because you're not giving private information, right? If she decides last minute, hey, I don't want to go to that bar, right? She doesn't go.
Well, I think meeting in person is a lot more potentially dangerous for a girl than
100%.
giving a number.
100% meeting in person is more dangerous.
Yeah.
Yes. But again,
because Instagram is also personal information. So you could hypothetically take her Instagram, find her address, and harass her that way, right? So it's still personal information either way. Like you're asking for some type of personal information. It's just medium of communications. And you're saying, I prefer this medium of communications. And the girl's saying, I prefer that medium of communication. And then you find a middle ground. You're like, oh, well, maybe we can talk on Telegram or something like that.
Sure. But it's the idea, right? It's the idea of, and maybe I'm looking at it differently. I don't know, but it's the idea of this boundary that she has set, right? I am more comfortable with X. When I hear that, when I see it, I'm like, all right, cool, right? But I was also married for 18 years, so I kind of had to learn that, right? Cool.
Oh, you're entitled to your own opinion, obviously. But do you see the logical contradiction in being okay with, for example, when asking a girl out and she suggests a bar, an example, like, being okay with that, but not being okay with this, right? Do you see the logical contradiction there? Either both are wrong or both are okay. One can't be okay and one can't be wrong.
Well, I mean, it really depends on how you're looking at it, right? Because again, when I'm looking at it, right, you're asking for a phone number. You're asking to meet in a different place, right? One of those gives you, you get different levels of control with either one, right? But if you have a phone number, but you've never met this person, right? You've never had a physical meeting with this person. You have a phone number. You can do a lot with it. If that person says, okay, fine, I'll meet you at the bar that's got wing specials, but she doesn't show up, right? She makes the choice not to appear. She's no longer in any sort of situation.
You still have her phone number, right? Because you've been texting each other.
I don't know. Maybe she stayed on Instagram. I don't know.
But then even if you have your Instagram, you could do a lot if you want to with that.
Sure. Then
both are wrong.
Then both are wrong.
But people have to be able to communicate somehow. Dating involves some inherent level of risk, right? It comes down to risk tolerance and people making their own decisions for their safety. Now, look, if a girl's not comfortable giving her personal number out, she can just use Google Voice or any one of the millions of apps that exist to give a girl a different phone number. There's all kinds of precautions a girl could take if she feels for herself the risk of giving her phone number is too much, right?
But let me ask you this.
I think as an adult, she should make that decision for herself.
But let me ask you this, right? Let's say it's your child. Let's say it's your daughter. Okay. Your daughter says, I don't want to give out my phone number. And some guy says, you can block me later. What do you tell your daughter?
That to me would not be indicative of anything. I would be like, honey, I think this guy, sweetheart, I think this guy really wants to go out with you.
But that again is feeding that sense of entitlement, right? Should she not immediately have the right to protect herself?
Sure, she
does.
What
she's comfortable with, right? If I hear no, and I've heard no, right? In 41 years that I've been on this planet, trust me, I've heard a lot of no's. If I hear no, it's a no. If I hear I'm not comfortable, you're not comfortable. Cool. I respect your space. I'm out. That's it. You don't push it. That's the point, right? She says, I'm not comfortable. She's not comfortable. There's no, let me rub your feet, right? Let me try to make it comfortable for you, right? No, let her make it comfortable for her.
Okay. Do you acknowledge the fact that women like a man who is persistent?
Everybody's different.
Most women, generally speaking.
Depends, honestly. I mean, in the women conversations that I've had with women, right? Women want somebody who respects their space. That's it.
Yeah, but that's sure. Everyone wants that, but that's not what turns a girl on. That's not what a girl is fantasizing about at night. Girls, generally speaking, like men who are persistent, dominant, confident, and also, yeah, of course, they want a guy who's going to respect their boundaries. All these things go hand in hand, right?
Sure.
So, in the dating space, right, if you're talking to a girl and you're trying to make some kind of plans or set something up, and she says, literally, and again, we're not even talking about hard no, we're just talking about a girl saying, I feel more comfortable going there. And if you just counter with, oh, well, let's do this instead, and then blah, 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 and you give her a logical reason, that's not going to be pushy to most girls. To most girls, it's going to be like, okay, well, that's a guy who's persistent, right, which is attractive. For example, recently we had a chick on our podcast, and she gave an example. This one guy DM'd her 52 times on Instagram before she replied. Now, me personally, I think that's really excessive. Not something I would do, right?
No.
But now they're in a relationship, right? And I asked her, hey, what made you decide to, go out with this guy? He seemed kind of needy. She's like, honestly, I admired his persistence.
Okay.
Right? And we've had stories like that happen for days, right? I think there's a big difference between being persistent and being pushy. Those two may sound similar, but not the same thing. Being pushy is when you're badgering the girl, when you're like, come on, give me your number. Come on, babe, please give me your number. Please give me your number. That's pushy. Being persistent is like, hey, listen, like, I think it'll be really cool if you give me your number and we can chat more. If you're not interested, it's okay, right? You're giving her a way out. And then it's up to the girl as an adult to decide whether she wants to go with that or not. Like you mentioned earlier, the girl is entitled to not want to do that. I agree with that. She's entitled to make her own decision. But in the same token, she's also entitled to go with it if she feels comfortable. So that it sounds like in that situation, the girl made her own decision as an adult that she's okay with giving the number.
Sure.
And that's what happened.
Sure. Yeah. All right. I'll agree with you there.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. All right, cool, sweet. So then we get into the other issue, which is the potential for misinterpretation, which I think is a fair point. But I would counter with this. I think anything and everything can be misinterpreted. And I don't believe a content creator bears the responsibility for someone completely misinterpreting his content. Because then by that token, every time there's a school shooting, some content creator would have to go to jail because every time there's a shooting, they go through what they watch and they find out, oh, he watches this YouTuber, right? That means that, he was a Ben Shapiro fan. That means Ben Shapiro kills people, right? Not really, as long as Ben Shapiro's not talking about like anything violent. So that's kind of the problem I have with that logic is my video is not encouraging harassing girls. I have multiple videos where I give disclaimers where I say, don't harass girls, like don't be needy, don't be pushy. So I just don't feel like I should be held responsible if some crazy person takes that video and says, I'm going to go and rape a chick, right? Because Alex said that you can get her phone number instead of Instagram.
Yeah, and it wasn't for me to say, you're responsible for what happens, right? I mean, we're all responsible for the content that we put out to some degree, right?
Of course.
But again, it's the idea, and we've got this generation of these alpha males, if you will. I hate that fucking term for the record. I hate the term alpha male because it's whatever. We don't have to get into that. But we've got a ton of them, right, that are pushing a very similar approach. Some of them far worse, right? Some of them.
Who are you thinking of? Maybe I know them.
All right, fuck it. I'll just say it. Like the Fresh and Fit podcast.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely awful, right?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of them.
The stuff that they put out and the things that they say, fucking disgusting, right? And it's that line right? Because I understand there's this. I mean, and it's been around for generations. This kind of this dating help, right? This dating assistance, right? I mean, they made movies about it, right? Hitch was a dating expert, right? You've got these experts on how to get women. You know, it reminds me of Wayne's World. You know, when they're in Benjamin's apartment, right? He's got all those books about how to pick up chicks, right? And all that. It's that kind of that male bravado. This idea of, again, the quote unquote alpha male going after.
What's your issue with the term alpha male? Let's kind of talk about that a little bit.
One, it's thrown around far too much.
I
think it's thrown around far too much.
Okay.
And it gives this, again, it gives this connotation that, you know, only the alpha is the good one. When if you look at pack animals, it's actually the beta male that is kind of leading everything, but that's another story. If you look at
leading everything,
the beta male will be more protective. The beta male is a provider. The beta male is the one that holds things together. The alpha male is just kind of running amok. Cool. You want to be an alpha male? Go ahead. I hate the term, right? That's what you want to do. I just hate the term. I hate the term, right? There's this toxic male positivity that's out, and it takes away from the humanity, right? Especially when it comes to men and women, right? When I look at it, and again, I look at it from the perspective that I was married for 18 years. I'm newly single. I don't look at these dating gurus. I don't look at people that are like, hey, here's how you get chicks. I mean, do it the same way I've always done it, right? I talk to women. It's a numbers game. Some of them will say yes. Some will say no. That's it. Cool. But ultimately, the whole alpha perspective of, you know, taking charge and never saying, you know, never taking no for an answer.
Well, I think you're sort of misinterpreting what it means to be an alpha male. I've done videos on this. Being an alpha male certainly doesn't mean never taking no for an answer or being pushy. That's like a misconception people have about being an alpha male. Being an alpha male is someone who's a good leader. He inspires people to follow him by choice, not by force, right? If you have to force someone to follow you, you're not an alpha male. You're a dictator at that point, right?
Sure.
An alpha male is someone who inspires people to want him to lead.
Sure, but a lot of the people that are throwing that around, they don't inspire me to do anything but get angry. To be quite honest, but again, I'm not saying that's you, right?
Yeah, no, I get it. There's a lot of cringe people who call themselves an alpha male.
I'm not saying that's you, right? I'm just saying that this general idea, right? And throw that out, right? Take this whole alpha male situation out of it, right? But this general idea that women are here to serve, right? Women are here to be subservient to males and they're objects, and that's it, right? That's an issue. It's always been an issue, right? And anytime that anybody speaks up against it, right, people get upset because it's what has been taught to males for generations, right? Something about, you know, being a man and, you know, getting the woman that you want. You know, it's just
okay. Well, let me ask you like this: now that you're back in the dating scene, are you gonna, generally speaking, be the one that takes, you know, that leads when it comes to, you're gonna approach the girls, you're gonna set up the date, or you're gonna let the girl lead?
Well, no, I mean,
you're gonna lead, right?
Sure,
right. Why are you gonna do that? Because that's what a man does. Right? A man
but I will lead with a respect of boundaries and her wishes, and that's it, right? That's where I'm at on the whole thing. Right?
You can be an alpha male who respects people's boundaries. You don't have to be an alpha male who's a narcissist, right?
I suppose, but when you look at 95% of the alpha male content that's out there, very narcissistic. It's very toxic. It's very much anti-woman in a lot of ways. It's very objective.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a problem with the alpha male content. I think that's generally a problem with all types of dating related content on YouTube. If we go to the other end of the spectrum and we look at like feminist type of dating advice, it's probably even more toxic from what I see. It's a lot of hating on men. Men should be ashamed of themselves. It's a lot of that stuff too. So I think there's just a lot of toxicity in the dating space in general. I don't know if it's necessarily like somehow tied to people who call themselves alpha male?
I mean, it's sure could be everywhere, right? I mean, I wouldn't say that feminism is hating men, right? That's more of a misandry situation. But feminists, feminists, meninists, as they've called themselves. Sure, there's a spectrum, right? But and of course, it's up to people to absorb and digest that content, and use it.
Well, I think while you may hate the word alpha male, now that you're going to be back on the dating scene, you are generally speaking going to be alpha, like you're going to lead, right? More or less. Obviously, you're going to be respectful, but that's part of being an alpha male is leading. So
I suppose,
as much as you may hate the term, that's what you're
doing.
That's okay. That's what you should be doing. If you wait for the girl to lead, you're going to be home alone.
Yeah, no, I mean obviously you're going to approach people, right?
Right.
But again, it's
the lead.
Right. But also,
and then the girl decides if she wants to follow or not. The girl might say, no, I don't want to go out with you.
Sure.
The girl might say yes.
Sure.
The girl might, at that point, the girl makes her own decision.
Right.
But you still have to lead. You still have to propose the initial date. You have to follow up. You have to make the date happen. That's up to you as the guy.
Yeah. But that is, that's a whole other ballgame, right? I'll get into that later.
Well, that's what being an alpha male is.
But again, and sure, all right, is taking charge, all right. But again, it's that idea, right? That's pushed by a lot of people, right? I saw your video on it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I agree with some of your points. I don't agree with a lot of I don't disagree with a lot of your content.
Okay.
Some of it is helpful, but
come over to the dark side, Zach.
It's never gonna happen, my friend. But a lot of it again, and it's not just, and it's less you than it is others, right? But it's that general idea, right? And that's where I saw and I don't even want to call it an issue. That's where I just saw kind of the questions, right? When you invited me to debate it, I was like, yeah, all right.
I can't debate for other people's content. There's
no, of course not.
That I disagree with, and I've been pretty public about.
Yeah, that just came up. Yeah, that just came up in this conversation. It's just as a kind of a contrast. But
what are some of the other things that you said you agree with some of it, and some things you're kind of like? What are some other things you disagree with my content on?
There was one about how to tell if or it was the one about catfishing, right?
Okay, yeah.
It was like ask her for more pictures,
right?
Again, it's a boundary, right? When you look at the pictures that people share, right? And then I mean I'll speak for myself, right? People will share the pictures that they are comfortable sharing, right? People will post what they are comfortable with, and to ask them to do more, right? Because you think you might be getting catfished. I get it. I understand the intent, right? Because we want to make sure that the people we're talking to are the people that they say they are. But, right, if they post a picture that is what they're comfortable with, right? Let it be. Right? Give it time.
But this I don't understand. Okay, so you're talking to a girl, right? You think she may be cute, but you don't know. You're not sure if she's catfishing you or not. What is the issue of just asking her for another photo? And then at that point she can make the decision as an adult if she wants to share it or not. I mean, I just sort of have an idea of treating women like these like kids who are incapable of saying no. Like she's an adult. She can make her own decision if she wants to share another photo or not. But are you not entitled to just once ask her for another photo if you don't feel comfortable with the amount of photos that she has?
I don't know. Honestly, I can't answer that.
Well, what would you do? Like, do you use dating apps or how do you? Okay.
No.
Okay. Well, let's say I was setting you up on a blind date, right? I'm like, Zach, I know a girl who lives in your area. She's perfect for you. I'm going to set you guys up. Here's some photos of her, right? And you're like, Alex, her face is okay, but I don't know about her body. Can you ask her for another photo of her? No. You would just meet up with her without knowing what?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But then what if you get catfished?
so be it. But
Isn't it
again,
easier just to ask her for one photo than wasting like 2 hours of your time, 2 hours?
but to say it, like, if let's say, right, she posts pictures of her face or, you know, neck up, right, and you're like, let me see a picture of your body, right? She may not be comfortable with that.
So then she doesn't do it,
right? Which is why she hasn't posted them, right? Maybe she's not comfortable, right?
So if she's comfortable, she's going to say no. Not comfortable, she's going to say no.
Right. But why not take what she's given, right? Which let's say it's a dating app, right? Let's say we're on, I don't know, Tinder, right? And she's got pictures of her, right? Their neck up. Cool. All right. I can make a judgment based on that. Okay. But obviously she was comfortable posting that. Why push it?
Well, because you don't want to be catfished. I don't see you asking her for one photo as pushing it. Pushing it is when you're repeatedly asking her, come on, share photos with me. Just asking once, hey, can I see more photos of you? I don't see that as pushing it. I see that as like a reasonable request. And that point, she can decide to honor that request or not. And if she chooses not to, then you know that something is fishy, and then you move on, right?
Well, and it may not be fishy, right? If she refuses, right? She says, I don't want to. I'm not comfortable with it. Okay, cool. I'll see it for myself, right? We're going to meet in person. Maybe.
Why would you waste your time and her time like that? Like if she like I personally don't like to date overweight women, right? Why would I waste my time and her time, 2 hours, make her drive, make myself drive, if I already know she's not going to be attractive? Why would I do that to myself? It seems so much easier.
I don't know. I look at it. I look at it differently, right? Maybe I do, right? Maybe I look at it differently. I see beauty in a lot of things. I see beauty in a lot of people from a lot of different perspectives, and it's not that important to me, to be quite honest.
I mean,
and quite frankly, you can tell, like, to your comment of, you know, an overweight woman, right? You can tell if a woman is what you want to call overweight by looking at the neck up. Why ask for any other pictures that she may not be comfortable with sharing?
Because sometimes you can't. I've had many situations where I wasn't sure. I asked for photos and the girl turned out to be hot. Sometimes you can't tell because girls are really good at doing angles and lighting and all this kind of stuff. So sometimes you really can't tell.
Fair enough, I suppose. I don't know. I haven't, you know, I mean, it just sounds like maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. I'm not comfortable.
It sounds like you're a nice guy for sure. You seem like a good person, but I think you're like just a little too worried about potentially offending someone, right? Like I think you have to risk potentially offending someone, and that's okay if you accidentally do. I don't think you should ever try to offend people, but if it happens, then I don't think it's the worst thing ever. Like I think that you have to draw a line somewhere reasonable, right? There has to be everything that has to be a line. So I agree with you. You know, for girls, like you ask her photos, she's saying no, you can't. Yeah, obviously don't harass her. But I think asking a girl just once who you might be interested in for more photos and letting her make that decision, I don't really see that as violating her boundary. I just see that as you asking for more information.
But to prove that she's not catfishing you, right?
Well, right, because you don't want to be catfished.
And then define that, right? I mean, define that. What is, like, if I think of catfishing as, you know, this is not the person at all, right? Like, person is posing as, you know, let's say in my case, a 35-year-old woman from Seattle, right? And I agree to meet based on conversations and photos that have been exchanged. I agree to meet, and it's George from down the street. Right? That to me is catfishing. Right. Your idea of, you know, you said, why waste my time if she's overweight? If she's the same person that you were talking to, right? That's, to me, isn't catfishing, right? That's, you have a very specific preference to the women that you like. And if she shows up and, you know, she's not as physically attractive as you had hoped, she didn't catfish you. She just didn't live up to your preference.
Well, so there's different levels of it. It's not all black and white. There's different levels of catfishing. So if you're talking to a girl that looks like she's in good shape and she shows up and she's 50 pounds overweight, but it's the same person, she's using photos from 5 years ago, that's catfishing. But there's worse catfishing. Yeah, if she's a dude, that's even more extreme catfishing. There's different levels.
But say she is, right? Let's say hypothetically you're talking to somebody, you talk to her for a couple weeks, okay?
Yeah.
You make a connection, right? You find things in common. You have good conversation, right? She shows up heavier in person than she is in her picture. She's still the same person. She is still the same person.
She's not the person that you thought she was going to be. You thought it was going to be.
She's not the person that you idealized, right? You idealized this person who was.
Well, you're going off the information that you have, but let's not make it seem like this is all accidental. Girls are very good girls have a good amount of self-awareness and they know what they're doing. So
sure.
if you get a situation where a chick looks like she's in good shape and she shows up and she's 50 pounds overweight, that wasn't accidental. She did that on purpose. And some girls do that.
And maybe that's the case, right? But if you've been talking to this person for weeks and you have a connection with her, why does it matter?
Well, because most guys are not attracted to overweight women. Like, I mean, would you be attracted to a woman who's overweight?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. I mean, yeah, most guys are not.
Yeah, because again, have I made a connection with this person? Right? If I've talked to somebody for a couple of weeks, I got a pretty good idea of who they are as a person.
So do you have any physical preferences?
Sure. We all do. But at the same time, I'm also more interested because maybe it's my age, right? I'm 41 years old. I've done the physically attractive thing. It's not my top priority.
So you would be willing to compromise your physical preferences if there's a good connection?
100%.
Okay. That's interesting. I would not.
Absolutely.
No, I would not.
And that's where we differ, right? And that's okay, right? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having that preference, right? Or having, we've got an age difference, right?
Well, not that much. We're only 9 years apart.
Right. So, but I'm much older than you are, right? So
I'd say you're 9 years older. I wouldn't say you're much older. You're like, I have fun around there.
Right. But 9 years is a big difference in a lot of ways, right? I've been married. I'm not necessarily looking for that next marriage, right? And I'm not necessarily looking for just tonight, right? Right now, what I am doing is building connections because I was in a very different situation, right? So now I'm trying to explore everything, right? So for me, it's about connection.
Yeah,
because
I mean, the way I see it.
At the end of the day, that's what matters, right? Because even myself, right? What I looked like a year ago is not what I look like today. People that I met a year ago, they're like, you look different. I'm like, yes.
But if you were Zach, if you were to use pictures from 10 years ago, that would be catfishing the girls.
Sure, I guess. Yeah.
Even though you're still Zach, that's still catfishing.
Sure.
That's still not something you should probably do. But yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, everyone has different, I guess, standards. But the way I see it is you can build a really good connection with a girl who's also physically attractive or meets your standards.
Oh, 100%.
She's attractive and we have a connection, right? So to me, it's like, why would I settle for a girl who is not attractive or is not my type? Like, to me, that's just like crazy talk.
No, that's, again, that's your preference, right? When you look at preferences, right?
No.
People rank things, right? People rank, the physical aspects, the mental, right? The emotional, all of these things, right? They're ranked. Everybody has them, right? And for me, it's not number one. Yes, I want somebody that I am attracted to, but for me, there's more to an attraction than just a physical attraction, right? Because I understand that it's not going to be forever.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that part. Yeah, there should be an emotional connection. There should be an intellectual connection. Sure. I guess where you and I differ is, for me, I think it starts with physical attraction and then it builds on that. And then you build an emotional connection and intellectual connection. But if someone doesn't meet my minimum threshold of looks, I don't think I'm going to want to try building an emotional connection with them because, again, I think there's more than enough good-looking girls out there who meet my standard who are also I'm going to be able to have a connection with. So why would I settle, Because the way I see it is like,
I respect your opinion.
I think you also, you're not like a super whatever. You're like a normal guy. Like you have options too. You can get a girl who meets your looks threshold and who you have a connection with.
Yeah, but it's going back to the video, right? Of and the idea of asking for additional photos. Sure, you can, but again, it's what are they comfortable with, and does it at the end of the day? Does it matter to me? Not really. But
well, I think I think if you're willing to compromise your physical standards, then I guess it doesn't really matter, right? I guess in that case it doesn't. But I will say this: I think most guys are more closer to me, at least the guys in my age range, at the very least.
Oh yeah.
For them, if they find out the girl they're talking to is 50 pounds overweight, that's a deal breaker, regardless.
And I'll be completely honest, right? I mean, granted, I was married at 21, so bear with me there. But prior to that, right, the younger me, I was always, looking at physical first, right? That was my primary focus, right? Sure, but as I've gotten older, right, I understand that there's more to it.
Yeah,
right?
No, there's definitely more
to it. So that's where I just kind of look at it differently. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Right? I'm not saying that it's wrong to want somebody that you're physically attracted to. I don't want to say that, because I want somebody that I'm physically attracted to, right? But I also want more, right? I want somebody that I am emotionally attracted to. I want somebody that I can carry on a conversation with. I want somebody who I'm connected to.
Yeah,
right?
well, I want all those things too. Zach. Yeah, I want all that.
And we all do, right? But and again, I think I look at it differently. I've got a different lens just from my experiences. So I don't know, man. I mean, it's a young man's game out there.
Well, I have a lot of clients who are older than you. I have clients who are in their 50s and they do pretty well. So I don't think you're like somehow screwed or anything.
Oh no, and
but I think I'll be honest. I think you're short selling yourself a little bit by willing to compromise your physical standards. Like I think you're short selling yourself as a man. Like I don't know, man. Like for me personally, I'm just like I deserve, what I'm attracted to. I don't need to settle, right? So I feel like for you, you want an emotional connection, sure, but you can find emotional connection with a girl that meets your physical standards. Why not just go for that?
Yeah, and it is important, but it is not, to me, the most important, is all I'm saying. So, but
do you think for you, though, if you find out that the girl you're talking to, like low-key catfished you, wouldn't that be a violation of trust?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose,
if most girls found out that you were using pictures of you from 10 years ago, not only would that be physically, disappointing, it would also be a violation of their trust. It's like this guy, like, kind of lied to me.
If they like me now, based on pictures that I took 10 years ago, I'm doing okay because I look better now than I did 10 years ago.
Oh, do you? Okay. I didn't know that.
No. But no, I get what you're saying, right? And there's a difference, right? When you're looking at 10 years, right? When you're looking at 10 years versus, a picture that she may have posted and then she's put on some weight because we've all been locked in the house because of a goddamn global pandemic, right? Everybody got a little bit soft.
Right? Oh, not me. I kept going to the gym the whole time. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between 5 pounds and 50 pounds, right? Yeah, if a girl puts on 5 pounds, I don't think that's the end of the world. It's not a big deal. Maybe even 10 pounds. But there's a difference between 5 pounds and 50 pounds and 10 pounds.
I get what you're saying. I also think that, we have to look at it from, kind of a time frame perspective, right? I mean, is that meeting, is that 2 days or is it 2 weeks after we start talking? Right? Because in 2 days, you're not going to get a lot of information out of this person. You're not going to build a strong connection in 2 days. Right? But if you talk to them frequently over a 2-week period before you meet, right? Or even 2 months or however long you're talking, you're going to have varying degrees. Right.
Well, in my opinion, you shouldn't waste 2 weeks unless you know what the girl looks like, right? You should kind of figure out if she's your type. And then if she is your type, then you can talk to her for however long. But like, I don't know, like to me, that's just like such a waste of time to spend 2 weeks talking to a girl who might not even be your type.
I mean, you get a lot of information in a 2-week period, right? And and I speak from experience, right? And I've been able to learn about a person, right? And ultimately get more pictures without asking, right? I haven't had to ask for a picture. It was, hey, look, this is the dress that I wore today. Cool, right? And then I make that, I can make that distinction.
But I don't. The thing is that I think you're wasting your time. Like, I don't think you need to wait that long. I think you can just straight up ask her. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking someone.
I suppose.
Like, if you want to find out she's a smoker or not, you don't have to wait until a date and see if she pulls out a cigarette. You can just straight up ask her, "Hey, do you smoke cigarettes?"
Right. I mean, obviously, though, do you smoke? It's kind of an important question, right? Are you a drinker?
To me, it's not. I don't care if a girl smokes or not, so I don't care about that.
Right. Like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me because I used to smoke. Right. I smoked for 20 years. Right. Yeah. I don't anymore. Somebody wants to smoke. They're a smoker. Fine. Right. Mm. I will ask. Are you into drugs? Which ones? Right. Are you smoking meth at a Walmart, or are you taking mushrooms on the weekends? Like, which drugs are you playing with? Right.
Right. But that's what I'm getting at is, like, if you want to find out this kind of stuff, you don't need to wait. Like, maybe the girl is not comfortable with putting out there that she does drugs. I'm saying I don't think you need to wait 2 weeks to find that out. If that's something that's important to you, you can ask her during the first day,
I suppose.
And then if she does do drugs and you're not into drugs, you can just be like, okay, we're not a good fit. It's the same thing here. If you're not into overweight girls and she's overweight, you can ask her on the first day. And if she's overweight, you can be like, sorry, I don't think we're a good fit. Right? It's the same thing. You're asking for information that's important to you.
I can, I can see your point, but again, it's, maybe it's how I view it, right? I'm like, because for me, and again, I speak only for me, right? For me, it's, while I want them to be physically attractive, I'm gonna be quite honest, my range of women that I find attractive, right? It varies. Yeah, because we like different paintings, right? We don't like the same type of art all the time, right?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I'll be very interested in having another conversation with you like 2 years from now, after you've been on the dating scene for like 2 years, and kind of see what your perspectives are.
Sure.
How long have you been on the dating scene for?
So, I mean, my divorce was finalized in September of last year. So, I'm out here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be very interested to see, what you think maybe a year from now, after being on the dating scene for a while.
Sure.
I think you might find that it's a lot more cutthroat and competitive than it was 20 years ago.
It always has been and always will be. And I understand that. I get it, but I don't know, man. It's a wild ride out there. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. I mean, I look at the information maybe a little bit differently than a lot of people, and
well, I think you're really concerned about potentially offending someone, which is fine. But I think that you'll find that that's not really a practical way to go about your dating experience, and that you have to be able to risk potentially offending someone in order to get some dates, right? I think that's what it comes down to.
Sure. I mean, I guess, but I never looked at it as, I was afraid of offending somebody. I have this idea about boundaries, and I have a hard time breaking those boundaries for myself, and, call it right or wrong. I'll leave that to your opinion, but, for me, right, in the way that I operate, it's, that was the crux of kind of what started our conversation was.
That's actually a perfect analogy. Think about our interaction, right? You could make the argument that I violated your boundaries because you were like, oh man, I got some stuff going on. I was like, all right. Then I followed up like a week later, and you're like, oh man, right? So I followed up with you a few times, right?
Sure.
You can make the argument that was like a violation of boundaries, but I don't see it that way.
No.
I see it as more of like, I thought this would be a good discussion, right?
Yeah, no, and I was all about it.
If I wasn't willing to follow up, this discussion would have never happened.
Right. And, and I mean, you did catch me at a very interesting time. I got a lot of shit going on, but, and I was I was ready to do it, and then had a lot of stuff going on, and I was like, hey, I can't right now. And then it did kind of die on the vine. And I'll be quite honest, it wasn't a violation of a boundary, but your last response before I was like, fuck it, set it up, was it was very challenging.
I know it was.
Right?
And it worked.
it was very challenging, and it worked. And and it wasn't, I didn't agree to do it out of some sort of anger. I was just like, you know what?
Right.
I respect it. Fuck it, let's go. Right? Because I was the one that said, like, I responded to your video, like, let's do it. Right? Come find me.
You made the decision
Sure.
to do it, right? But I think the same thing applies for dating. You can't be afraid to like challenge girls a little bit and be like, yo, like, this is what I want to do. This is my agenda. You're either in it or not. And then the girl can decide for herself, yes or no, right? In the same token, right? I don't think you can be afraid to like challenge girls a little bit, right?
No,
to a healthy degree. And there's a reasonable middle ground.
Yeah, I respect that, but it was, again, going back to kind of the original point was the dangers therein, right? And if there's, I mean, obviously you've accounted for that in some of your videos where you do make it very clear, right? Where you have to respect what a woman says. She says no, cool, I respect that. Right. But again, that was the whole point, was just like, it's a very dangerous line, right? When you're like, well, maybe, right? Push it just a little bit, right? It's how much further are people willing to push? And that
there has to be a reasonable stopping point. Right. Yeah. So if you had, after I gave you that little challenging text and you had said no, I wouldn't have kept blowing up your phone. Right. I understand that things can cross over that weird line. So in that same situation, if the girl said, no, I still really don't want to give my number out, I would have just let it go. Right. So there has to be a reasonable stopping point. Right.
Sure.
But I'm saying that stopping point doesn't have to be like at the first sign of the girl maybe changing her mind. Like, you have to make it somewhere reasonable, where a reasonable person would be like, okay, this is fair. Like, I agree, you should not harass women, barrage women, annoy them, right? Yeah, obviously, like, of course, that goes without saying, right?
Sure.
I think following up once or twice is not that. That's something different.
Yeah, but again, it was the general idea and the possibility of somebody else seeing that and pushing that, right? So. And I'm not saying that you have to be responsible for everybody that watches your videos, but
No, I think I'm responsible for the content I put out there,
sure.
Right? But what I'm not responsible for is some crazy person completely misinterpreting my content.
Sure.
Like that, I don't think I'm responsible for that. That's like someone going to Home Depot, buying a hammer and using that hammer to like kill their mom. Like, Home Depot is not responsible for selling the hammer. Like, even though you could use a hammer to kill someone, right? Home Depot thought you were going to use that hammer to like fucking do some, work around the house, right? It's
true.
The whole of this thing is not to help guys like harass or rape girls. It's to help guys have go on normal dates with girls. If some crazy motherfucker, takes it way too far, like, I don't think you can be held responsible for that.
Fair enough. Yeah, you know what? I respect it. I respect it, and I appreciate your perspective on it, and and giving the deeper dive, right? Because that's shit. That's the problem with social media, right? Social media, TikTok in general, right? We're looking at max 3 minutes, right? You're looking
at 30 seconds, but yeah.
Well, I mean, you get a maximum of 3 minutes on TikTok.
Yeah, but those videos never get views. You have to do like 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, so you're looking at 30 seconds, right? And that 30 seconds, there's a lot that can be said and there's a lot that cannot. You know what I'm saying? So I feel you. But no, this is all right.
Yeah, I thought it was a good discussion. I mean, I think that we kind of covered everything. Is there anything else that you want to discuss?
No, I think we're good, man.
All right, cool, bro. Well, yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on. I got the next chick here. But yeah, do you have any closing thoughts or anything else you want to add?
No, man, I think I've said enough.
All right, man. Well, yeah, I wish you the best luck on the, on the dating scene.
Thanks,
hopefully it goes smoothly for you. Yeah, maybe at some point you'll check out my content. Maybe something will resonate, a little bit, give you some, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, man, wish you the best.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Alex.
All right, buddy. Take care. All right. I thought that was a good discussion. Yeah. All right. Let's add the next person, Rose, on. Hello.
Hi. So before I turn my mic on, I've been drinking some Dos Equis, and I didn't know if it was cool with your guidelines or whatever if I drank
Yeah,
while
you can
on
do
cam.
whatever. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't care. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure. I don't want to
Yeah, it's
violate
all
anything.
good. Yeah, no, you can curse, you can smoke weed, you can drink.
Oh,
The only thing you can't do is show a nipple, right? So no nipple slips, please.
all right, I got you.
Did you catch that? That how much of the last debate did you catch?
Not too much. I've had a busy ass day, so I really didn't catch too much. But I did notice that you said something about like a questioning text or something like that. What do you mean? Like, what would be an example of like a challenging text that you would send a woman?
A challenging text would be I was more making a general principle of like you can't be afraid of like potentially challenging someone's beliefs. So an example of that would be kind of the analogy I gave earlier with him would be like the girl's like you're making plans with a girl and you're like, hey, I know this great bar nearby, and then she's like, oh, I would rather go to this bar, right? And then like if you're like super worried, you might be like, okay, sure, I'll go to that bar, even though you don't want to go there. But like I think you can't be afraid to be like, oh, well, actually this bar is better for this reason. So, if you want to meet me there, that's cool. If not, that's fine too, right? You can't be afraid of like
Yeah.
challenging the
Okay.
girl's opinions and preferences at all,
Mhm.
as long as to a reasonable degree, right? You're not like
Mhm.
just sitting there like fucking challenging her nonstop.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was
That
getting
makes
at.
sense.
Because when me and Zach were talking, it was pretty interesting because we were discussing him doing the debate, and then at one point he's like, "Oh man, I changed my mind," and I hit him with a challenging text. I was like, "I figured you would." ... And then he was like, "Okay, fuck it, let's do it." Right. So that's kind of I just found that ironic that the only reason we were able to have the conversation is because I wasn't afraid to send that challenging text.
Mhm.
Right. And that's the reason that happened. And what I was trying to get him to understand is it's like that with dating too, right? Like I've had so many situations where the girl's like, oh, I don't know if it's the right time for me to be on the dating scene or something. And I'm like, well, listen, like, I thought it'd be a lot of fun for us to just get a drink, get to know each other. But if you're not interested, it's cool. And the girl will be like, okay, fuck it, let's meet up, right? That's like a little bit of a challenging text, right? And then she can make her own decision as an adult if she wants to, go through with it. Just like Zach made his own decision as an adult to have that debate.
I just think men need to be more comfortable with rejection because I've gotten it a lot because for a while I was like representing brands and stuff and doing different brand deals on Instagram. And I would get like these random DMs from dudes that would be like complimenting me, asking me out, not even knowing if we're in the same location. And then when I didn't respond would be very, very vulgar and very rude and call me a slut, call me a bitch when I never even responded to them. So I think that
Yeah,
there's
I'm not a
problem.
fan of stuff like that. Yeah, those guys getting butthurt. That's not challenging. That's getting butthurt.
I think there's a problem that comes with rejection, and men need to understand that it's okay for someone to not like you, and
Sure.
it doesn't mean that there's anything inherently wrong with
Right.
you. And I think men sometimes take it to heart when women that they're going after have this pushback of like,
I agree with you on that. I agree. Yeah. And rejection is seldom personal. It's usually doesn't really have that much to do with you. Maybe she's not interested in dating. Maybe she already has someone she's seeing. Maybe you're not her type. It's seldom personal. So yeah, I agree with you. Like you shouldn't get butthurt or something like that. But I think there's a difference between a girl rejecting you, like just telling you straight up she's not interested, and being a little unsure if she wants to do it or not doing. Like there's a difference between a girl saying, "Hey, I'm not interested," to a girl saying, "I don't know." Right? Those two are not the same thing, right? So if a girl says, "Listen, I'm not interested," there's nothing to challenge. Right? Like at that point, it's like, yeah, whatever. She's not interested, right? You're not going to change her mind. But if the girl's like, "I don't know if it's the right time for me to date," you could kind of like, give her a different perspective. You'd be like, hey, listen, I just thought we'd meet for a drink and get to know each other. If you're not interested, it's okay, right? And then at that point, she can decide, if she's going to go out with you or not. But yeah, if a girl straight up says, no, I'm not interested, then there's not really much you can do with that. So the only thing you can really do is move on. There's no need to like get butthurt or get defensive or like curse her out. There should never be a situation where you need to like insult the girl. Like there should never be a need to insult the girl. Right. Like, so, yeah, I agree with you. That's like messed up. Like guys do that. But yeah, I do know a lot of guys get really butthurt when they get rejected.
I wanted to talk to you though. This is one of the main topics was your misconstrued idea of feminism a little bit.
Okay. Sure.
So like pretty much the definition of feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. That's kind of the whole idea.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misconception with the idea that we're equal right now because it's not. Like the Supreme Court is currently deciding whether women have rights on their own body. Like we are still in this place where we do not have even legal equal rights to men, let alone societal equal rights. And so I think there's a lot of discussion about double standards that they'll say that are for men versus women without understanding that they're not double standards. They're possible guards or protections that women have in place to protect themselves from these social inequalities that happen.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So I think there's a lot to unpack with what you just said.
Mhm.
So, so there was different waves of feminism, right? You know, there's first wave, second wave, third wave, right? So we can't just lump all feminism into one word, right? People often do that, but there's different waves of feminism. So first and second waves of feminism were about exactly what you said, getting equal rights under the law for women. Because for a long time, women, you know, couldn't own property, couldn't take out a mortgage until I believe the early 70s, right? So yeah, for a while, for most of American history, women did not have equal rights. And that's what first and second wave feminism set out to address. I've always said this. I do think the Roe versus Wade thing is a potential, it just depends how you think about it, is a potential violation of a girl's legal rights. So I'm actually pro-choice. So I agree with you that that's like kind of a gray zone. I don't think the goal, though, this is what I disagree with a lot of feminists on. I think they think that overturning Roe versus Wade is about the patriarchy and punishing women. I think it's largely about religious people who are just really paranoid about fetuses being murdered, right? I don't think it's about like oppressing women, even though I know that's a consequence of that. Like a woman has less options with her body if she gets an accidental pregnancy. But I don't think there's malicious intent. Meaning, I don't think it's a bunch of like really, really misogynistic white guys sitting around like scheming. I just think it's a bunch of religious dudes who like are really paranoid about going to hell because fetuses in their country are being murdered, right? So that's kind of that. But I think if we take Roe versus Wade aside, because I do think that's like a whole complex issue in of itself, if we take that aside, I do think that at this point in time, women and men have all the same legal rights.
How do you feel about the wage gap?
Okay, so that's a whole thing in of itself. Me and my girlfriend have always discussed that. So there's this idea that's quite often portrayed that there's a wage gap, that women get 86 cents on the dollar that every man gets. The problem is that data, that argument is very disgenuinely conducted. So meaning what they did to get to that number, 86 cents on the dollar, is take all of the money that men make, all the money that women make, and look for the difference. The problem with that is twofold. One is that women and men generally gravitate towards different jobs. So men on average will be more likely to work in finance, like higher risk, higher reward, right? Women are more likely to work in more stable jobs, right? Like ones that are going to just pay like a $60,000 a year salary, right? Men are more likely to take like the all or nothing jobs. And secondly, men tend to work longer hours than women, right? So when you account for the job difference and you account for the hours, so if we look at same jobs, same hours, the wage gap disappears. And actually men and women make essentially the same amount of money. It's like such a negligible difference that is statistically irrelevant. So once you start accounting for the difference in hours and for the jobs, the wage gap just magically disappears.
I actually have statistics pulled up from Berkeley University where they did a study. They did a study both on sexual harassment among women and the wage gap within 2019. And
Okay,
they found
let's
that,
take a look at it.
yeah.
Do you know how to share the screen?
Oh no, I actually have it pulled up on my
Send me
computer.
the link, I can share it and we can all look at it.
Let me see.
Yeah. Oh, sexual harassment, I think, is a whole thing in of itself.
Mhm.
So we can definitely talk about that, I think, like afterwards. But let's focus on the wage thing for now.
I don't know if I can find it because like I have it on a whole different screen. I don't know, but I can just read a
You can
section
just
of
send
it.
it to me on TikTok if you want, then I can pull it up. Or
Yeah, I can actually probably do that.
your camera keeps disappearing, though.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Let me see. Ooh, I got this one. Okay. So I sent the first one that I was looking at from pewresearch.org.
Okay,
That's the
let's take a
first one
look.
that I'm looking at.
Okay, I'll pull it up right now.
It actually gives you the ability to look for the pay gaps in your area as well, which I find pretty interesting.
Okay, let's take a look at that. I just want to pull this up, but TikTok is lagging. Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. You're good. Okay. Got it. Okay, let me pull it up. I'm going to share the screen, then we can go through it together. Okay, so let me share the screen.
It should have sent the right one. I hope it did.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, gender payback by use. Okay. Okay, so is this the right thing? Like, you can see the screen, right?
I believe so. Let me double check.
What is the gender weight gap? And you'll find out what page gap. 2,000 women, United States, and what men according to research. Okay, but what I'm curious is, does this account for different jobs and hours earned? And
I sent you another one that actually should. That should be the more in-depth version of the one you just have pulled up right now.
Because this is just very general. It doesn't. So let me pull up the second one, because this one okay, 2008, the inflation. Okay, no, see, this is still, it still needs to make sure that it's looking at same jobs. Because if people are working different jobs, then obviously there's going to be a difference. Okay, so let me see at the second link you sent.
Hey, morra, cuídalo.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Pero
Every time you
cuídalo.
open TikTok, just the video starts randomly playing. That's so presumptuous of them. Okay. Okay, second thing you sent me. Okay, Pew Research. Okay, let me pull that up. Okay. Is this the second one? Hello? Hey, Rose. Rose. No. Well, while we wait for her, let's kind of go through this. The gender gap. Oh, you there?
Yeah, my bad.
Okay, so gender pay gap in the U.S. holds steady. The gender gap has remained relatively stable the past 24 earned 84% of what men earn. It goes back to what I was saying, 84 cents on the dollar, right? But is this adjusted for, because this is such a deceitful thing that some articles do, is they don't adjust for hours earned and job differences. So take 40%, okay, that's been recent decades. See, this doesn't say anything about adjusting it for different. This is the same thing I've seen time and time again, which is like it says 82 cents or 84 cents on a dollar, but it doesn't adjust for different hours work. In 2000, about 4 in 10 women have experienced gender discrimination. This doesn't look like it adjusts for it. So let me find a study that adjusts for different jobs. Do you agree with me that it's important to adjust for hours earned in different position, right?
I think that whenever they adjust for hours, I think that they also take into account maternity leave, which I do not think should be adjusted into hours, considering the fact that a woman had to push a 9-pound thing out of her vagina and has to spend 9 weeks connecting to it. I don't think oftentimes when you look into different ones that will go for hours adjusted specifically, they will take into account maternity leave.
Okay, so I pulled this up on my end. So let me share this. This is Forbes, so we can agree that's not like some random source. And this kind of sheds a lot of light on this. Okay, dispelling myths about the gender pay gap. Okay, so there are many media reports of a gender pay game, often claiming that women are only paid 80% of what men are paid, by the numbers comparing the total amount of salary paid to men to women in this country. It does not take into account such crucial factors: profession, qualifications, type of employer, seniority, hours worked, or many other things that go into deciding compensation. When these basic factors are taken into account, the gender pay gap vastly decreases. For example, Pay Scale issued a report, the state of gender pay gap, based on a survey of 1.8 million wage earners. Women still only make 0.79 for every dollar men make in 2019, right? Disturbing. But the controlled pay gap, the amount that women earns for every dollar that a comparable man earns, was a small fraction of that. When comparing two people in the same profession with the same seniority, working the same number of hours and so forth, women earn 0.98 for every dollar that a man earns, right? So then again, you see that the wage gap, when you account for this kind of stuff, seniority, hours, and profession, it becomes close to negligible, right? Now that leads us to the next question: is why is there still a 1 cent or 2 cent difference, right? So this kind of tries to address that. Of course, even 2 penny pay per dollar gender pay gap is 2 pennies too much. However, it's far from clear that even this small pay gap can be attributed to gender discrimination. As the Freud lawsuits illustrate, many factors go into a person's salaries that won't even be picked up by servers. Ask about a person's hours work. So this basically the point that this article is making is that once you account for these factors, the wage gap becomes negligible. And then with that 1 or 2 cents, it's not clear if that's actually a result of some kind of discrimination or much more likely to other factors that are just not reflected in the survey. Because whenever you do a study or an experiment or anything like that, there's a factor: is this statistically significant, right? And 1 or 2 cents, 1 or 2% would not be considered statistically significant, meaning that it's not indicative that there's some kind of discrimination. It's just statistically insignificant. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a common thing that gets thrown around, is that like, oh, women make either 84 or 80 cents on a dollar for men. And I would agree with you. If that was the fact, I would be like, yo, that's messed up. Like, a woman should earn the same amount as a man for doing the same job. Like, I think 99% of men would agree with that, right? Like, everyone should get paid the same if they have the same qualifications, right? So I'm not certainly going to sit here and argue that women should be paid less. No, that's like really messed up. But the question is it happening? And then again, like when you start adjusting for hours and careers, it goes away.
But to take into account like all of the factors, you'd also have to take into account the majority of the higher paying jobs that they're typically comparing these to, such as IT positions and stuff, come from privatized colleges. And privatized colleges are known commonly to discriminate against women. That's just like a thing that they do, especially in IT colleges and stuff like that. Even in law practices, there's a huge thing. I think with UT, I want to say it was back in the 90s where they had a huge problem with that. I don't remember. I want to say it was UT, but a bunch of those factors and just discrimination and like hiring practices. You can look at the disparity between the amount of men that are in IT jobs versus women in IT jobs, and just the discrimination whole that goes with getting the position in the first place, and looking at the different kinds of jobs. Like if you think of how much teachers get paid and the percentages of women that are teachers versus men, women are typically higher. And then if you look at the amount of plumbers and how they get paid and the amount of men versus women, it's kind of insane that an essential worker that we're going to say is responsible for teaching our new youth is going to get paid significantly less than someone that is a plumber. And that's part of what their argument is in the wage gap, is not just in a specific job, but in jobs dominated by both genders. That the one that is dominated by one gender makes significantly less as a whole than the other one that's dominated by a different gender, even though this one is considered typically more essential jobs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things we got to unpack with that. Okay, let's just go in reverse order. So I agree with you that teachers are underpaid. I think teachers deserve to be paid more overall. But the question is, are teachers getting paid less because it's a primarily female profession, or are they getting paid less because there's a lot of people who want to be teachers, right? Think about being a plumber. It's not something most people want to do. Most people don't grow up thinking, I want to be a plumber, right? It's a pretty shitty job. You're literally going through shit, right? Like your job is to like fucking go through people's shit, right? Not a pleasant job, right? So as you can imagine, not a lot of people want to do it, man or woman, but generally the people who want to do it are men, right? Teachers, a lot of people grow up thinking, I want to be a teacher, right? You get to educate the youth. A lot of people become teachers, not for the money, but, for the opportunity to teach kids versus plumbers. No one gets into plumbing, for the fun of it. People get into plumbing because that's what pays the bills, right? No one's like, I want to change the landscape of American toilets when I grow up, right? So I think that has to do with supply and demand. And I don't see any evidence that has anything to do with gender. That's purely a case of supply and demand. There's a lot of jobs that are dominated by men that don't pay well, right? Like, for example, construction work, right? My dad has a company. He pays his employees $14, $15 an hour. Construction is primarily dominated by men, but doesn't pay well, right? Because there's a lot of people who will be construction workers because there's no skill required. Versus being a plumber, you have to go to trade school, right? There's a big barrier to entry, right? So there's not that many people who are qualified to be plumbers, which is why the companies have to pay them more in order to get them to show up. Versus with teachers and construction workers, a lot of people are just willing to do that. With teachers, because it's fun. With construction workers, because there's no barrier to entry. So then that kind of unpacks that. So then the second thing we have to look at is there discrimination when it comes to getting into STEM fields? So my question to you will be this: do you believe in equal outcomes or equal opportunities?
Neither.
Well, okay, let me kind of explain that. So equal outcomes would be me and you, we're equally qualified and we're both trying to go to STEM school, right? Equal outcome would mean that you and I have the same exact chance of getting into that STEM school. That's equal opportunity. Equal outcome would be we look at STEM school, we're like, this needs to be 50% men, 50% women, right? We can't have this be 90% men, 10% women, even if the opportunity to get in is the same, because that's discrimination, right? And those two are different things.
I think it's complicated because equal outcome is necessary in the sense that we make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Well, the thing is, you can have equal opportunity, but not have equal outcomes because, for example, men, naturally speaking, are much more likely to gravitate towards STEM fields, right? Women are more likely to gravitate towards nursing, teaching, human resources, right? If you look at any human resources department, it's primarily dominated by women. But that's not necessarily because men have disadvantage when it comes to being HR. It's just that women naturally are really good at things involving other people, right? Women generally have better people skills and men generally gravitate towards more analytical things. So I don't think that just because you don't have equal outcomes, that indicates some kind of discrimination. I think there's other factors you have to consider. And the big one is that men and women, generally speaking, with a lot of exceptions, gravitate towards different things. Now, of course, there's some women who want to be engineers and work in STEM. I personally used to date a girl who was an engineer for Boeing, right? She went to BU engineering school, right? So, she chose that, but she was the exception. It was 90% guys. And again, because most guys tend to gravitate towards this and most women tend to gravitate towards this. And that's okay because men and women are different.
But I don't think that it's just a gravitational thing. I think there's been like generational issues where women haven't been allowed to hold the same jobs as men. And we're still feeling the effects of that. Like, I mean, granted, you would hopefully desire that people would have an equal opportunity, but that's just not true. People don't have an equal opportunity. We have so many different factors like poverty issues, housing insecurity, food insecurity, like even where you live in proximity, like all of those factors do not allow for equal opportunity. So that's where I take issue because we don't have equal opportunity. That's not a thing that we have yet, which sucks. But given all the outside factors, I don't think equal opportunity is a possibility. And I don't think men and women just gravitate to different things. I think that women gravitate more towards hospitality because that was their job. That's what they were told to do for a very long time. And now we're just starting to see the pushback now that we have sort of equality, that women are now allowed to gravitate towards other professions. And it's just not as high as a percentage because we've had the generational oppression of not being able to. So I think it's why the percentages are so low. I don't think it's that we gravitate towards different things. I think it's that we haven't had the opportunity to. Now that we are, it's a very, very slow progression because it's not just a shift of like, oh, we can now do this. It's a mind shift. It's everybody societally having to accept this and move forward from a different mind state before.
So do you not think that men and women's brains work differently, largely speaking, and that men have, for example, there was a famous study that found that women have 10 times the amount of gray matter in their brain that men do, and gray matter is responsible for social type of things, right? Which is why women typically are much more socially in tune and socially aware than men, right? You would agree with me on that, I hope, right?
Sort of.
I mean, would you agree that women, generally speaking, have more social awareness than men?
I think they have more self-awareness, but I think it's just because of conditioning. I don't think that's a born natural thing.
Okay. Do you think there's any biological difference in terms of brain? Obviously not in terms of body, but in terms of the brain between men and women?
I think there could be as far as like the different hormones and like chemical functions that you have, but I don't think as far as how you treat other people, how you might process information. I think it's based off of an individual person, not based off of different sexes.
Sure. But do you think there's any biological differences that are inherent with your DNA, generally speaking, that men have in their brain that women don't and vice versa?
Not inherently, no.
Okay, because a lot of science and studies would disagree with you because this has been studied to death where they do MRIs of men's brain, women's brains, and the conclusion is always the same: is that there's certain things that are different in a man's brain than a woman's brain. Like, for example, why is the prison system just littered with men? Like, men, 99% of people in prison are men, right? You agree with me on that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because, well, men, again, men's brains work a little differently, and men are much more likely to do higher risk stuff that could involve going to jail, right? Women are less likely to do that. Of course, there's exceptions, and there's some women who do that kind of crazy stuff, but generally speaking, it's men, right? And that's not like a social thing. That's just like men and women's brains function differently in some ways.
I don't think that women don't. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that has been like scientific. Like, I could pull up some studies right now if you want, but that has been like scientifically really well established. Like, that men and women have some key differences in how their brain works and how they function.
But women don't commit crimes less inherently because they don't want to and they don't feel the need to. It's because they're at more risk with more of the crimes that men commit. So, like, if you were to take a woman and you were to put her in gang and deal with gun violence, she's much more at risk than you are to put a man. And that's because of biological differences. She's just more at risk. So there's a lot of things that men are imprisoned for that women aren't in prison for, just because it is more of a danger for them to involve themselves in that activity. I don't think it has anything to do with the differences in their brain, but the differences in their physicality and their abilities.
Okay. Let's take something else. Let's take suicide. A lot more men commit suicide. A lot more men commit suicide than women, right? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because conditionally men have been taught to have a lack of self-expressiveness within their emotions that aren't anger or discontent. I think that men haven't been allowed to express themselves for a very, very long time. And I think that is continuously perpetuated by other men, that you're supposed to have this idea of dominance and strongness that honestly a lot of women aren't super for. And you're starting to see this pushback, especially by women that like more feminine men. Harry Styles was a huge example of that. Women went crazy over that very feminine presenting man. And he did a ton of things for the Trevor Project and stuff like that. And he's very emotionally expressive. So I think that a lot of things that have to do with suicide in men, I think has to do with a lot of their lack of support and like emotional ability to express themselves, and how societally that has been stripped from them. And I think that it's entirely unfair, and men should be able to talk about how they feel and talk about their pain openly without the oppressiveness of
Do you think it's completely social? It's not biological?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let me pull up a few studies because I think that will kind of shed some light on this. So I just typed in biological difference, brain, men and women, right? So let's go to the first thing that pulls up, Stanford. We can agree that Stanford is pretty like reliable source. How are brains different? Neuroscience shows that the human's brain is a sex-type organ with distinct anatomical differences in natural structure, blah, blah, blah. Brain imaging studies indicate these differences go well beyond the strictly reproductive domain. Adjusted for men's are bigger. So a woman's hippocampus, critical to learning memorization, is larger than a man and works differently. Conversely, a man's amygdala, associated with the experience of emotion and the recollection of such experience, is bigger than a woman's. It too works differently, as Cahill's research has demonstrated. Cahill scanned the brains of men and women, viewing either highly aversive and emotional neutral ones. The Worms fills were expected to trip off strong negative emotion, blah, blah, blah. And activity in amygdala during the viewing experience is expected to predict the subject's later ability to recall. But in women, the relationship was observed only in left amygdala. So this is just like basically research upon research. We can pull up the next one, NIG, 6 differences in brain anatomy. So this just talks about, again, like hang on, this is right here. All the differences in the way, biologically, the way in a brain works between a woman. While there are many similarities between men and women, sex can make a difference for some health risks and behaviors. For example, women are more likely to have certain mental health disorders, conditions like depression. Men are more likely to have certain neurodevelopmental conditions, such as blah, blah, blah. Studies have also shown sex differences in certain cognitive tasks, like the ability to recognize faces. Researchers have observed that sex differences in the volume of blah, blah, blah. So there's a whole bunch of biological differences. And this is like, we can go just down the line. Like we can go to this. How different are men and women's brain? The question has been explored for decades, but a new study led by Rose and Franken Institute is the first. The diswiring is single megasenses. The answer is how men and women do slightly differ, but the key is finding that distinctions due to brain size and not sex difference of brain are tiny and consistent. Okay, this one is actually arguing that they're not that bad. Then usually large studies. Okay, wait. So women's brains are about 11% smaller than men's, right? So like you have like these clear-cut differences, right, in the brain between men and women that I think like you can't ignore. Like, I think you can just like look at Stanford and look at all these other sources, and like the conclusion is always the same. There's some key differences that are biological, not like social, between a man and a woman's brain. That's not to say that there's no exceptions. There's no women who are good at like engineering. Of course not. But generally speaking, yes, men and women's brains are a little bit different. So if you want to argue against that, like that's fine, but then you would have to like find some research that supports that. Do your own research, because all the research that's out there basically suggests. Now they differ on exactly what the differences are. Maybe some studies say the difference is 20%. Some say it's 10%. Some say it's 50%. But the differences are there, and this is shown that again, men and women, generally speaking, have different strengths. Generally speaking, gravitate towards different things, and all that stuff. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading something on it about neurosexism.
Okay. So yeah, so that's basically my take on that. I think like, yeah, you'd be hard pressed to like make the argument that men and women's brains are the same.
But I don't think that that explains any behavior of them. I don't think that's an excuse for different behaviors. Like, I don't think that because a woman's hippocampus is larger than a man's, and because it is smaller than hers, that it means that a man is more likely to rape a woman or any of those things. So I don't think.
Well, men are significantly more likely to commit violent crime than women. And that's not just because of women being weaker than men or physically weaker than men. Men are more likely, like every school shooter, it's a man. A woman is just as capable of holding a gun and shooting, right? But very rarely is a woman a school shooter. It's always men, right? I'm not saying it's all positive. There's some things that are good, better about men's brains, some things that are worse, right? This is a clear example of something that's worse, right? Every school shooter is a man, even though a woman can hold a gun just as easily as a man can. Okay, there are reasons for that. That's not just social. That's, again, men's brains are much more likely to kind of go in that extreme direction. Otherwise, school shootings would be like 50-50. There'd be some women, some men, right? It would be more or less split down the middle.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to. Okay. School shooters don't really have anything to do with the chemical makeup of a man's brain. And oh God. Okay. I don't understand how the makeup of a man's brain makes an 18-year-old who was abused most of his life, who has severe undiagnosed mental issues, have anything to do with the fact that he went and shot up a school. I think that has to do with the entirety of the way that he grew up, the way that he interacted with people on social media, the influences that he had, the fact that he was able to purchase a gun. None of that stuff has to do with the chemical makeup of his brain. Like, the size of his brain. None of that has to do with
the coincidence that 99% of school shooters are men? Would you say that's a coincidence then?
No.
So there's got to be something about men that makes them more prone to be school shooters, right?
I think it's the societal conditioning that men have experienced generationally.
You don't think it's biological at all?
Absolutely not. I don't think anyone is biologically wired to shoot up a school.
No. I'm not saying anyone's biologically wired to school up a shoot. I'm just saying men, like if you look at anything, school shootings, prison, violent crime, anything, it's predominantly men, right? And you can't just all chuck it away due to physical strength, right? Again, men are more likely to go in that direction. Most men won't. Like, I will never be a school shooter. None of my friends will ever be a school shooter.
I'm glad.
99.9% of men will never be a school shooter, right? But if there's something that's more likely to go off in a man's brain, that weird disorder, that will make him more prone to shooting up a school. Otherwise, there would be some female school shooters, but there's not. It's all men. Otherwise, there would be more chicks in jail, but it's not. It's like predominantly all men. Otherwise, there'd be more women engaging in, I don't know, some kind of armed violent shit. Again, it's not. It's all men, like, right? So again, there's some differences there to analyze. We can take something different, something less depressing, like chess. There's a reason why pretty much every single chess grandmaster is a man, right? Again, I'm sure there's some really great female chess players, but they're not even the top 300, right? Again, there's something in a man's brain that's going to make him more likely to be either a professional at chess or to shoot up a school or any of that stuff. Like, we can't just chalk everything away to being, product of, society, right? Because there's some biological key differences between us men and women.
Okay, so if you think there's a biological difference, how do you feel about trans people?
In like what sense?
Like, because if you're saying that there is a biological difference between a man and a woman's brain,
Right.
and then a trans person is transitioning, let's say, from a man to a woman, do you still think that they're going to have those biological urges of a man?
Yeah, I don't think you can change your brain, although I don't really know the science between how much adding external hormones, what kind of effect that has on your brain. I haven't like looked too deeply into the science of that, but I would still assume their brain doesn't change in its development because they're doing a transition when they're like 20, 25, 30. By that point, their brain has developed. So yes, even though physically they may look like a woman, they still more or less have the brain of a man, I think.
I would urge you to look up the studies based on trans people and their brain scans and the differences that they have from their actual biological sex. It's actually really, really interesting. I did
maybe you can pull it up. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't looked into that too closely. Give me the takeaway, or like show me the study.
Let me see if I can find, because oh god, I'd have to look back up at the one that I had. But it's actually really, really interesting because I think that it kind of breaks apart the idea that both men and women biologically are entirely separate, because there's this whole.
They're not entirely separate. There's some overlap. We're humans.
Biologically entirely different, because then there's people that present pretty much the opposite traits of what you would imagine a man would have entirely from like the time that they were a child. They present these opposite traits, both in what you would imagine is physical and mental. They even act different. So then it begs the question for me on how could they be different in their brain if there are people that are born and they present the opposite.
Let's take a look at the study. I mean, I don't know. I have to see the study and see like how they looked at it. I mean, did they do a scan of the person's brain before and after their transition?
I believe so. Let me see.
I think that would be like the only way of doing it.
Ooh, I think this is the right one I had. Mm-hmm. Okay, alrighty, I found it. Let's see if I can send it to you. It's from the Cleveland Clinic, I believe.
Okay. I'm not as familiar with them, but let's take a look.
Let's see. Please send. I know my Wi-Fi sucks, but please.
Or you can just tell me like what to Google and I can pull it up. And I'm just gonna get a drink.
Absolute ass right now. What's
up? I just heard absolute ass. What do you mean? What's absolute ass? All I heard was absolute ass. Is she talking about her Wi-Fi or the article or me or I don't know. I'm curious to see this research though. Oh, her Wi-Fi? Yeah, most likely. Let me see if I can find something. Trans people brain and study. Let me see what I can find.
I hope it went through. I had to turn my Wi-Fi off. It sucked ass.
Okay, I see. Okay, let's take a look.
I'm sorry.
You're good. What were you saying? All I heard was absolute ass. What were you talking about? Were you talking about your
Yeah,
Wi-Fi?
I'm sorry. This has been going in and out. It has been sucking ass all day. I was just talking about trying to find the article because I had a few
Oh,
of
okay.
them, but I think this is the right
Okay.
one.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's pull it up. Okay, research on transgender. Wait, nothing is loading. Stop sharing. Wait. Why is this not loading? The article you sent me is not loading. Let me try it again. Okay, I think you just sent me another one. No, that's the same one. I'm gonna try loading it again. Yeah, nothing loads when you click that article. Nothing happens. It's just complete blank. I can try searching transgender Cleveland Clinic and see if something shows up.
Yeah, it would probably pop up.
Okay, let me try it. Study.
If it doesn't, I can just read some of it.
Oh yeah, I want to see it. Okay, is this it? Okay, I think I found it. Let me share my screen. You can tell me if this is the right thing or not. Research on transgender. Okay.
Yes, that's the right one.
Okay, what's going on with your brain plays a role in determining the gender you identify with. A researcher working trans people starting to understand being transgender has nothing to do with sexual identity, as one doctor puts it. Where does gender originate? We're trying to change the understanding. This is a big goal. Okay. Embryo forms. Gender is not only male or female. I want to see the study though. We're also finding studies. Okay, in studies that use MRI, take images of brain as people perform tasks that brain activity transfer appearance to look like. Okay, let's take a look at the study. PubMed. Okay, this is the study that this is based on. It's PubMed. Specific cerebral activation due to visual erotic stimuli in male to female transsexual compared to with male controls an fMRI study. Okay, we don't have to read the whole thing. We just look significantly. Okay, introduction. Wait. 12 male and 12 female heterosexual volunteers and 12 male to female transsexual before any treatment viewed erotic film experts during an fMRI, additionally subjective rating of sexual arousal. So this was very directed at sexual stuff. Okay. Results. Significantly enhanced activation for men compared with women was revealed in brain areas involved in erotic processing, i.e. the thalamus, the amygdala.
Which one did you click?
I clicked. So when you go on the article, there's it says in studies that use the MRIs, and I clicked on the studies, right? So, and that's where it took me. Oh wait, it's my screen is not being shared. Hang on, I have to.
Okay, because I was like, what are you reading?
Oh yeah, it took me to it. So when you click studies, it takes you to here, which is what this whole thing is based on, is this study, as far as I understand. Okay. Results. Significantly enhanced activation for men compared with women was revealed in brain areas involving erotic processing, either thalamus and amygdala. When comparing M2F transsexuals with male volunteers, activation pattern was similar to male female compared to that, where revealed sexual arousal was assessed using standard rating scales did not differ significantly for the three groups. We revealed the cerebral activation pattern in man to women transsexuals compared with male controls, similar to female controls. Okay, so this study was very, very specific. It only looked at one thing, and that's how your brain reacts when there's something sexual that is in front of you, right? That was the goal. So I don't think this study, yes, it does suggest that when it comes to specifically towards watching porn or something sexual, that a man to female transsexual brain will work more closely to the way that a female brain works. However, I wonder how much of that has to do with the fact that a male to female transsexual takes female hormones like estrogen and stuff like that. I wonder if that was accounted for, because hormones definitely has a role on your brain, how your brain operates, obviously. Sexual arousal was assessed using standard rating scales and did not differ significantly for the three groups. Okay, this part is very interesting right here. Sexual arousal was assessed using standard rating scales and did not differ significantly for the three groups. So they were saying, actually, like with this statement, they're saying that all three groups got sexually aroused. We would really need to deep dive into this study and see what exactly happened. But again, I think this study looks very specifically at how our brains work when we see something pornographic. doesn't cover a whole bunch of things. So let's go back. Okay, so then let me go back. Hang on. I'm gonna go back to this to the initial thing you sent me. So I'm gonna stop my screen, share screen, Chrome tab.
Let's see, is it this one?
Research on transgender brain, what you should know. So okay. Research in these areas is extremely limited, and more research needs to be done to find conclusive results. Yeah, so I think there's really not enough info on trans people to come to any kind of like real big conclusion. Some research shows that brains of transgender people are somewhere in between, sharing characteristics of both male and female brains. So yeah, I don't, I think transgender people are a very, very small part of, the population. So they're a niche group. The research seems to be kind of inconclusive. Some of it shows that it's closer to the gender they identify with. But then again, we don't know how much of that is with hormones. We have to account for hormones, which I don't see mentioned in the study. And some research shows that it's somewhere in the middle. So yeah, I don't really know if that negates all the evidence that, I pulled up another study that men and women's brains work differently. I mean, it is interesting because it does suggest that, the way your brain works could potentially, at least when it comes to sexuality, be altered based on what gender you identify as. But then again, we don't know how much of a role hormones play. And, hormones obviously are important. So they would need to account for that in order to really.
In the study that you were reading, the reason why they use sexual arousal is because it's one of the easiest and most like visual things that you can observe the brain reacting to other than pain. So that's why they often use sexual arousal in studies such as this, because it's one of the easiest things that they can visually identify within the brain to have reactivity to. Just so I kind of as an explanation for everybody in the chat, it's like, why are you reading about them fucking? No, it's to show the way that the brain reacts.
Yeah, but even if we go off like what this says, they're saying research also suggests that the brain, transsexual brain works in the middle between man and woman, which suggests that there's at least some kind of biological role that is different between a man and woman's brains. I mean, that's just like, again, that's just like what the science is that like there's some fundamental differences between a man and woman's brains. And sure, some of it is because of social and stuff like that, but there's also a lot of biological differences.
But you can socially condition the brain to do different things that you want it to do. Like you can condition to do the brains a lot of things that you want it to do. So I think just because if we are going to say there are biological differences among the brain, I think that you can change the way that
that's like what the science is telling us.
Okay, then I think that you definitely have to take into account in all of the studies how those people were raised, the environments that they were raised in, how they react to different things in their entire life, the past mental health history issues that they have had. Because just saying that the brain is going to be different from a man and a woman in the way that they process information, I think that it would take into account all the different factors that they've experienced up until the point in which they were in that study.
No study is perfect, but if a study is good, they do try to control for outside variables. So they want to take people similar age, similar mental history, and all that. Again, like, sure, how you're raised and all that makes a difference. I'm not denying that, right? I'm not saying it makes no difference. But there's but you said earlier, you can train your brain. Some things you can train, some things you can't. You can train your memory, you can train your empathy, but I can't train myself to be attracted to, the same gender as me, right? Like if I want to become gay, I can't like will myself to do it. I can't will myself to, I don't know, become dumb or something like that, right? So some things are within your control, some things are not within your control, right? There's some things that, can be changed and can be changed. But yeah, like there's definitely a lot of it is like how we're born. And there's a lot of books and studies on this that a lot of, your, let's just say your brain's programming is going to be, this goes back to the nature versus nurture argument, which is something that's highly debated in the scientific community. Okay, how much of the way we are has to do with how we're raised and how much of it has to do with our nature? How much of it is nurture, right? This is something that's highly debated. I'm not going to claim that I have an answer on this and say it's like 80% nature, 20% nurture. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it is partially nature and partially nurture, but we can't ignore the nature aspect.
But I don't think we should use the nature aspect to excuse actions. And I think that is constantly happening when it is.
I'm not saying, no. I'm not arguing for that. I don't think like if someone shoots up a school, we're like, oh, but he has a male brain. No. I don't think we should excuse actions. Not saying that at all. right? But we also can't, when we see a discrepancy in like STEM fields, we can't just automatically jump to the conclusion that there's discrimination going on and ignore the fact that much more men are interested in doing STEM than women are, right? And there's biological reasons for that. We gravitate towards different things, generally speaking. Hello? Hello? I think you broke up. Hello? Rose? 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 Oh, we lost her. All right, let's give her a second. Oh. Yeah, the nature versus nurture argument is, again, it's like it's highly debated. I'm not going to claim it's like 80% nature or something like that. There's a lot of factors to it, but we can't negate the nature aspect and just say it's all nurture, and that the reason that it's all men in STEM fields and in jail and all that stuff is just because whatever social reasons. Like there's clearly a reason why literally every single school shooter, with the exception of like one or two, is a man. Like that's just not a coincidence. That didn't just randomly happen, right? Like, so we have to acknowledge there's some differences between our brains. Let's give Rose a second to join in. Hey, we lost you for a second. Hello?
Hey, it kicked me out. I don't know why. It just reloaded.
I was like yelling, Rose, Rose.
Okay, I got like.
Where did you?
The last piece I heard was just because they're male, they're not going to be a school shooter, and then it reloaded.
Just because they're male. Oh, I was okay. So you lost me in the beginning. So I was saying that, yeah, of course, we don't want to use nature to excuse behavior. I'm not claiming that. So yes, if, for example, a man shoots up a school or rapes a woman, we don't want to just be like, oh, well, he's a man, he's got a man brain. Of course, that's not an excuse. But at the same token, we can't just like completely ignore the nature aspect that's there and just jump to the conclusion that if there's some kind of discrepancy that exists, it's a result of some malicious discrimination and not just simply a difference. Like if you like, look, I'm not for discrimination. If there's discrimination, you can show me proof of that I'm more than happy to protest it with you. But you have to show me the proof of that. You can't just claim, well, engineering schools are 90% men, therefore there's discrimination going on, because that can easily be explained by the biological differences. There has to be something that suggests that, okay, women are actively being, discriminated against.
So, okay, you said that men are more likely biologically to commit violent crimes.
Yes.
So if that's true, then does it mean that we should, in preparation for men committing violent crimes, that we should heed men from having guns? We should be more, cautious around men possessing weapons or being around children? Because, I just think that it's a damaging thing of men to be like, men are more likely to commit violent crimes, because then that gives the idea that we should be more cautious of men. There should be this more like fear of men, and then men go and complain, why won't women talk to me? And it's like, well, because apparently you're more biologically likely to rape me. And it just doesn't make any sense if you're going to say that there are these huge biological differences that can make men more violent, but also women should not be afraid of men. I think that it doesn't make any sense.
Well, okay, so yeah, just because we have an issue doesn't mean we need to do something radically different about them. So do I think women should be, generally speaking, afraid of men? No, but they should be cautious. If I had a daughter, I would advise her to be cautious. If I have a choice between my daughter going to a party with 3 girls or 3 guys, I'd rather her go to a party with 3 girls because she's more likely to be safe. That's just a fact, right? So I'm not saying you should live in fear of men, but you should probably be more cautious with a man than with another woman, generally speaking. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't think we need to limit gun sales to men. I think we probably should limit gun sales to people who have mental disorders. But no, that would be pretty crazy if we only sell guns to women and not men. So yeah, that's a whole different argument. But we can't deny the reality. And the reality is that, 99% of school shooters are men. It is what it is, right? But it doesn't mean that we need to somehow discriminate against men. It means maybe we need to work on mental health and limiting some of the other factors that are within their control. Some factors are going to be outside of your control.
But if you look at the amount of like violent offenders that are in our prison system, serial killers and such, that are a large percentage of men, the issue is not that they're men. The issue is that the way that they grew up, the environment that they were in, the abuse that they endured, the type of family that they had, like that causes, like, it's a generational issue
Sure.
among the prison system.
But
So
women also get abused just as much as men do. But that women, yeah, I agree. There's definitely a strong correlation between childhood abuse and your this has been like proven, and your likelihood of engaging in violent crime. But first of all, not always. Some of these serial killers that actually had good childhoods. So that's a thing. But also, women get abused just as much as men do growing up, right? But women don't become school shooters and serial killers, right? So again, that suggests that there's something in a man's brain, in addition to growing up being bullied, that makes him a little different than a woman and more likely to engage in that sort of crazy ass behavior.
I think that the reason that they react differently is because they're expected to react differently. I think that we have these societal expectations that we put on people. So, like, that's why there's such a huge issue with men coming forward and being able to say that they've been assaulted. There's a huge issue with that. And there's a huge, like, disparity between the percentages of men and women that come forward because there's an expectation that's put on men for their reaction to sex in general. There's a societal expectation to it. So
Well,
that's
there's
why there is statistically less rape victims of men, even though there probably are more than what's reported, because there's this expectation on them. So there's this expectation on both genders that's been given societally to react to different situations throughout their entire life.
Yeah, well, I mean, no man is expected to become a school shooter or to be a serial killer, right? There's no societal expectation of men to do any of that, but they do it anyway in, way more than women do, right? So again, that suggests that it's like no, there's no like, Johnny, you were bullied, you must be a serial killer, right? No one becomes a serial killer or a school shooter because of some societal expectation. Uh,
They're expected to not be as hurt by or be as impacted by. Like, that's just an expectation. It's the whole thing. Be a man. That's like a generational statement that's been heard. I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure every man has heard it. Be a man. It is such a toxic statement because it prevents anyone who's been through a traumatic or even just a painful event to express themselves because they're being told to be a
yeah,
man, to man up. And it's excused that they're supposed to man up because they're supposed to have biological differences that makes them act like a man.
yeah. I agree with you. That's something that's problematic in society, that men don't have an easy way to express their emotions, and they're told to bottle them up. I agree with you. That's problematic, but I don't think that accounts. That in of itself accounts for like this massive discrepancy you see in school shootings, in chess champions, in all that stuff. Like that plays a small role, yes, but it's not. That's not the game changer here.
I think comparing chess championships to school shooters, I don't understand how
I'm
that.
not comparing them. The point I'm making is that both of those fields are dominated by men, like 99% men, 99.9% men. And I'm saying there's a reason other than how they grew up that causes that.
So you're saying that it is more biological that someone who is in an abusive household is going to then turn around and abuse someone else because they were in that abusive household than the fact that they were abused is because they were a man.
I don't know which one plays more of a role. I think they're both important factors. But what I'm saying is women get abused just as much as men do, generally speaking, when they grow up, but women never become school shooters. So that to me suggests that while it is a factor, there's another factor that's causing that. Because if that was the main factor, there would be just as many, female school shooters, because naturally, more or less, just as many women get abused growing up.
But you're not taking into account the societal expectation to how you're going to react to that. It is acceptable for a man to get more angry than it is for a woman to get more angry. You'll hear all the time, that crazy bitch, all the fucking time when a woman is expressing herself outwardly and angrily. But I have seen dudes punch walls over football games. It is more acceptable for a man to be angry than for a woman to be angry societally. And it is more acceptable for a woman to be emotionally distraught than it is for a man. And I think that that plays a lot of role. There are these people that go through abusive situations and pent it all up because they think that that's what they're supposed to do, and then end up becoming future offenders of that abuse because they never got the help that they needed because they were told that they didn't need it. And women on the opposite side end up, just dwelling in it so much because they're not told that they're allowed to be angry about it. And so I think that this third wave of feminism is so shit upon because for once women are expressing their anger, which is not supposed to be societally accepted. We are angry at everything. The whole Me Too movement was shit on because women were angry. They were actively shitting on the people that hurt them. And I think that it caused this huge discourse because for once we're seeing women act the way that society thinks men should, and vice versa. Men are acting more feminine. Men are more emotional. So I think it's causing this discourse to what people believe is supposed to be biology. So I don't think you can chalk it all up to biology.
I'm not trying to chalk it all up to biology. I understand that there's some societal factors that take place, but there's also some biological factors that take place. I'm not going to claim I know the exact percentage of each because that's something that's highly debated in the scientific community, but both are factors. But what I'm saying is if we take a look, like let's take a look at the example of school shooters, right? Assumingly, just as many women are abused when they're children as men do, right? Like there's not like some conspiracy to only abuse male children and like leave the women children, right?
I'm gonna need another beer. Hold on. I'm listening, I swear.
Both genders get abused, right? So then why is it that 99.9% of school shooters are men, right? There's something else there. Maybe higher testosterone levels, maybe, some biological differences. There's some other factors that are taking place there. But yeah, of course, there's, your upbringing and that stuff plays a role as well. No one is denying that, but we can't also, the same token, deny the biological differences.
What I'm not understanding is that you saying that a school shooter has to do with the biological differences between a man and a woman, rather than the societal differences placed on you being a man or a woman.
What I'm saying is there's never, for no person, is there societal expectation to shoot up a school, right? You can make that argument about lashing out in anger. Yes, sure, you can make that argument, but not for shooting up a school. No man is expected by society to become a school shooter, right? That's some kind of weird shit that happens in some crazy guy's brain that causes him to do that. Normal guys, normal people in general don't do that, right? That's some crazy fucking switch that just goes off, right? And I don't think it's just a coincidence that switch only goes off in men and never goes off in women, given the fact that both genders.
It's not a coincidence. It's just environmental and societal factors that have been pushed for generations that prevent women from having the same reactions because they're called a crazy bitch, because they're seen as a lunatic, because it was seen as women's mass hysteria in the 50s.
If someone talks about shooting up a school, they're seen as a lunatic too. Like men are not getting like societal validation talking about that kind of stuff.
But when women wanted rights in the 50s and wanted to go to college and wanted to do these things, it was called mass hysteria. And that's when there was a mass production of vibrators sold to try to stop mass female hysteria. And to imagine that something that happened then, and to imagine that those things don't continue to happen, is kind of insane to me, like how those could not continue to have effects today, even on the biology. If you're going to say that hundreds and hundreds of years of oppression of a specific gender, of a specific race, is not going to change the way that their brain functions, that's also insane. So I guess it does also take a place in biology as well.
That's because that's not how evolution works. Evolution doesn't work on the span of hundreds of years. It works on the span of hundreds of thousands of years, right? So let's say, I don't know, we decide as a society that we're going to like live in really tiny houses, right? Where, there's no roof space. Our skeletons aren't going to just shrink in 100 years. That stuff takes like hundreds of thousands of years. So from an evolution perspective, biology perspective, our genetics won't change in the span of 200 years. That's not
on your physicality, yes, but not on your brain chemistry. Or else a mother that has bipolarism wouldn't just pass it to her child if her grandmother didn't have bipolarism. That's not how your brain chemistry works. It's not like you losing tails.
I'm saying like if we go 60 years ago where a woman is being discriminated against and oppressed, right? That is not going to pass on through her genes, right? In the span of 1 or 2 or 3 generations, right? That would take countless generations, right? So societal factors like that will not pass on like through the span of 1 or 2 generations. It's just not how evolution works. Like evolution it has to do with time spans. You have to, like, evolution takes hundreds of thousands of years to have an effect, right? It doesn't happen in the span of several generations.
But I'm not talking like evolution about your physicality. I'm talking about your brain chemistry
Yeah.
and how
Well,
you
yeah.
react to things.
Yeah, so we're talking. We're talking about what a mother passes on to her kids, right? From a
Yes.
biological perspective.
Yes.
So we're talking about DNA, genetics. We're talking about DNA and genetics, right?
Yes, but in regards to your brain, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's all DNA and genetics, right? Your genetics will determine how your brain forms. It will determine how your body forms, right? Again, that kind of stuff. The genetic changes, they don't happen in the span of several generations. That takes thousands of generations for those kinds of differences to take root. So, for example, let's say we make a law that women are not allowed to learn at all. Like a woman learning is punishable by crime, right? Like it's the worst offense ever for a woman to read a book, right? In 2 generations, women are not going to be genetically dumber. That will take thousands of generations for women to become genetically dumber if we carry through with that. That's what I'm getting at. It won't happen in the span of 2 or 3 or 4 generations.
But you can pass forth mental illness like within the next generation. That can pass. Even traumatic ones, such as BPD, it can be passed.
Right, because
within...
it's already in your DNA. Like you can't pass along, like for example, let's say I injure my shoulder, I can't pass that along to my kid. Or let's say, I don't know, like I do a lot of drugs and my brain is fucked up. Unless I do drugs, like unless the mother does drugs when the kid is like fucking, like in her womb or whatever, that's not going to pass on, right? So yes, things that are genetic, like bipolar disorder, that will pass on because that's already in your DNA. Stuff that's not in your DNA will take hundreds and thousands of evolution cycles to become in your DNA.
Mental disorders such as BPD, which are called trauma disorders, that's what they're called. You don't get them from your parent. You get them from the environment that you are in. And it is most commonly that a parent that has BPD, the child also has BPD, even though it was not genetically passed. It was from the environment that they were in. They could also develop a trauma disorder. And so it still wasn't genetically passed.
Yeah, borderline personality disorder has a very strong genetic component to it. Environmental factors can play a role in activating it, right? Whether it gets activated or not, but it was always in your DNA. And you can test for this stuff now with 23andMe and all that kind of stuff, genetic genie, but that stuff was always in your genetics, right? Like, for example, I've done 23andMe, and my family is very predisposed to opiate and heroin abuse, right? So if I was to start taking heroin, I'm way more likely to get addicted to it, right? But if I don't do heroin, I'm okay. So yes, there is a outside role. Like I can choose to do heroin or not do heroin, right? But my kids are going to assumingly get that as well. They're going to be way more predisposed to abusing heroin, right? Another thing that we have in our families, we don't process coffee well, right? I can just choose not to drink coffee, right? Which is not a choice I make. And that's going to get passed along to my kids, regardless of the outside environment. Borderline personality disorder is genetic, right? But it can be activated by outside factors, but it still has roots in your DNA. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Both me and my mother have it.
I'm sorry to hear. Yeah, I mean that there's things that get passed around, right? But your kid will also be predisposed to borderline personality disorder, irregardless of how you live your life. Just like my kid will be predisposed to being a heroin addict, regardless of how I live my life.
No one in our family for the past 6 generations has had any history of any sort of trauma disorder other than us two.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can lie dormant, but I mean, you can't deny the research that if you Google borderline personality disorder, there's a strong genetic component to it. I'm sure it's probably been dormant in your family line on either your father's or your mother's side at some point. Sometimes it takes a combination of genes. So maybe your grandfather and grandmother, there's dormant recessive genes. I mean, this whole thing gets really, really complex. So I'm not going to claim to be some kind of super expert on epigenetics, but I do know enough to know that borderline personality disorder certainly has a strong genetic component, and that evolution doesn't work in the span of 100 or 200 years. Now, going back to what we were talking about earlier, because I don't know if you have anything to add on that point, but going back to what you were saying earlier about you were making a point about something to do with third wave feminism and outrage and why people are not happy with it, right? Something like that. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
So third wave feminism, people they like to separate feminism because each wave of feminism, I suppose, is just fighting for different things. So I think people also separate the reaction to it. So there's a huge difference between how feminism was treated in the 50s versus how feminism is treated now.
Mhm.
And it has a lot to do with both how women are reacting to feminism and how they are expressing themselves in regards to it, and how men are accepting it, and what lies in between and what they are fighting about. So back in the 50s, it was just that we were able to go to school, have like the same like job opportunities, not
Yeah,
be stuck in
all
abusive
good
households.
causes. Yeah, all
Yeah.
things I can get behind.
So now it is things such as like exposing stuff as such as the wage gap, exposing stuff as the Me Too movement, and everybody has such a problem with the Me Too movement. And I really don't understand, because their argument is that there are so many false allegations, but you're more than welcome to look at the statistics versus allegations versus unreported actual
Yeah,
rapes and
I've
sexual
looked
assaults.
at that kind of stuff. Yeah.
They're like entirely uneven, and so it's very infuriating for a lot of women. And I think it has created what men like to call like the hating men culture. I don't think that it's hating men. I don't hate men. I've been with my
Oh, that's
boyfriend
good.
for a year. I'm like very, very happy, and I don't have a
Okay.
hatred for men. And I think a lot of feminists don't. I think what feminists have a hatred for is the way that men think women should be, and the way that they think that they should react. And the new wave of whatever it is, with a bunch of men in podcasts spewing bullshit that they know what women want in relationships when they are not women, is such a problem. And it causes this huge backlash, because women are being spoken for by men about women's opinions. And I think that that causes a huge discourse, because it's like you're talking as me, but you're not. And
there's so much
I
you
think
said that we need to unpack. There's so much what you just said, like 4 different arguments that we have to go through one by one. So you're talking about third wave feminism. So I have different feelings. So the wage gap, as I've pointed out, and you're welcome to do your own research on that. The reason there's pushback on that is because it doesn't exist, right? So if there was a wage gap, I'd be more than happy to protest it with you, right? Because I don't believe that women should get paid less for the same job as men. But if you actually, the reason men have a lot of men are pushing back at that is because they're like, this is a talking point. Like when you actually look at the economics of it, and like this has been studied to death by literally every economist, left, right, center, and they all come to the same conclusion. Once you adjust for these factors, kind of like I showed earlier, it doesn't exist. The second point, right, it's like one of those myths that just refuses to go away. The second point about sexual abuse being swept under the rug, the Me Too movement, I actually think there's some validity of truth to it. I think, yes, in Hollywood, for example, there was, a lot of women that were being sexually assaulted, and that's not right. And, I'm glad that something was done about it, right? Like, Harvey Weinstein was clearly a really horrible human being that assaulted a lot of women, right? Like, there's no doubt about that, right? And it's a good thing that he's in jail now. So that's a good thing, right? So I'm not completely against the Me Too movement or anything like that. However, what I think some men argue is that sometimes it goes too far, where it goes from, hey, let's take this stuff seriously, to let's believe all women and let's not believe any men. And that can go too far, where, like as you saw in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation, where she accuses him, everyone believes her, and then the facts come out, and it's like, okay, now we don't believe her, and that happens. Now, I agree with you. It doesn't happen as often as some guys make it out to be. Yes, and I agree with you also that a lot of sexual harassment and assault allegations are unreported. I agree with you as well, and I think something should be done about that, right? I agree with you. But I think the reason that some men push back at it is when it goes too far, and we go from saying, let's take every woman seriously, to let's believe every woman. Those two are different things. I think every woman should be taken seriously when she reports, sexual allegations. But I don't think we should just automatically believe all women, because some women lie, right? Like we've seen that happen. So that's kind of the reason that men are pushing back on that.
Did you ever look into the ruling that was done in the UK over Amber Heard and Johnny Depp?
Yeah.
So there was actually evidence brought against Johnny Depp that was like valid. Like he had threatened her over text messages and said these like things where he wanted to like rape her and beat her. And these were like real text messages that he had sent that had validity to them. And I'm not saying in any way that he did not deserve the win that he did, and that she was not guilty of all the things that she did. Absolutely, she was. But what needs to be understood and taken seriously is that just because Amber Heard lied, that does not mean that there should be this movement, and it's happened all over Twitter, that all women are lying. And
No,
Amber
no,
Heard,
no. I'm
no,
not advocating for that. I think all
but
women should be taken seriously.
Amber Heard is going to become a scapegoat. And like that's going to happen. Like whether people want to admit it or not, Amber Heard is going to be a scapegoat for men that are going to have
Well,
abuse allegations, both in Hollywood and outside. They're going to say she's pulling an Amber Heard. And that's going to be a thing
yeah.
that's happening. That happened to me. I had to deal with my ex because he just got off his probation after a bunch of abuse things and dealing with me and stuff. And he's just off of probation. And he posted me on one of his social medias and said I pulled an Amber Heard when he had a conviction for it. And so this is going to be a reality that's going to happen. It's going to be a thing. And I think that the believe all women or believe all victims is so that there is this security that knows that there won't be a scapegoat. There won't be somebody that they can go, oh, this now excuses my behavior because there was this one crazy woman. All of them have to be crazy and all of them have to be liars.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think all women are liars. I think we should, like I said, we should take all women seriously when they report sexual misconduct and investigate it and, look at it. But I don't think we should automatically, just because a woman makes an allegation, assume she's telling the truth because it's not just Amber Heard that lied. I agree with you that more often than not, sexual misconduct gets unreported rather than women lie about it. I agree with you on that. But we also can't deny the fact that sometimes women make shit up, right? Like as kind of was the case in the Amber Heard situation. What usually happens with movements is when things go really far in one direction, there's backlash. And I think, unfortunately, Amber Heard did a big disservice to female sexual assault victims. Like, I think, if you care about this stuff, you should call her out too, because she did a big disservice by crying wolf, right, to actual victims of domestic abuse, right? Like what she did was really not cool, not only to Johnny Depp, but to actual victims of this kind of stuff. Like every time as a woman, you make up something like that, you're setting the cause back, right? So, I think what she did was, very ethically messed up, right? For two reasons. So what you're seeing is kind of a pushback on that because there have been men who've been accused and slandered, right? When when they never did anything, right? And it's really sucks to be in that position. It also sucks to be a woman who's the target of sexual abuse, right? So we need to take a reasonable middle ground where we take all women seriously, but we don't just automatically judge the man guilty before we even hear the evidence.
Okay.
I mean, would you disagree with any of that?
In a majority of sexual abuse cases, the evidence is very minimal. It's very hard to prove it. Like, especially if there's a lot of time where I want to say, I can't remember, I read it somewhere, but it was a lot of time of, I think it was up to 72 hours was the average time for a woman to wait to report her sexual assault. And within that time, a majority of the evidence that you could have of that sexual assault is gone. So I think that it is this stress of how am I supposed to prove it? And I think that's so stressful for every single victim, regardless of whether it's a man or woman. I think that is why there is the believe all women. And that's why there's the believe all victims, is because it is so hard to prove that someone was sexually assaulted or harassed, especially when it comes to big Hollywood. You can buy innocence, like whether we want to admit it or not, you can buy innocence.
No, I agree. Yeah.
There's this huge issue with being able to prove it. And I think that there's this huge need, which I'm glad that there is within our justice system some of the time, for innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
But sexual assault is such a touchy subject in regards to innocent until proven guilty because it's so hard to prove. And so often the evidence is lost.
Right. But the thing is that we can't, I understand your point that it's hard to prove. And I understand your point that it can be very stressful for a woman who experienced sexual assault to have to relive it and go to the police. I get it. I agree with you. Most rapes go unreported. I have more than enough experience with women to know that to be true. Right. So, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. And something should be done about that. But we can't just give up our president of innocent until proven guilty when it comes to sexual assault. That's just how our justice system operates. So just because it's sexual assault doesn't mean a man is guilty until proven innocent, right?
Yes, I agree that they're not guilty until proven innocent, but I think that there should be a different attitude towards like sex crimes because of the difficulty in proving it. I think that there should be a different attitude and a different approach to sex crimes.
Like what would you do specifically? Like, what do you think we should do? You're saying you're not a fan of guilty until proven innocent. So what else, what can we do with sex crimes?
I think that there's a huge issue because
But what are
in
like
my
some
own
solutions, in your opinion? What do you think we can do?
I think there's a huge issue as far as money goes. I think that money is a huge issue, which I know isn't an overnight fix, but you can buy your innocence wholeheartedly. There's a ton of cases going around where men have bought
Yeah,
women out of
missettlement. Yeah,
testifying
yeah,
against
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So I think that there needs to be a harsher punishment and a harsher understanding for those that do buy their innocence. Like, so they'll force them to sign NDA, non-disclosure agreements about it. And it's kind of insane that their lack of punishment, like not just for the crime that they did, but there's no punishment as far as them buying them out. So I think
Are we
that
talking about settlements, like pre-court settlements, meaning like I sexually abuse you and then I pay you like $1 million not to go to the police, or what are we talking about here?
yeah, like sort of that, like NDA agreements that they have before anything legal ever happens. So I think that there should also be penalty for that, for the suggestion of NDAs as well. I think there should also be penalties for that just aren't present. I don't
I
think
mean,
that you should ever.
I would not necessarily. Yeah, I would. Sure, I would agree with you on that. Yeah, like that. If you, yeah, sure, you shouldn't be able to buy your way out of sexually assaulting a woman. Although, what do you do in a situation like, okay, like let's say someone, like let's say, okay, well, I hate, I don't want to use myself as an example. Let's say John Smith sexually assaults Gina, right, and then Gina brings up a charge, and then they go to court, and then John says, hey, I will pay you $1 million to drop this thing. And Gina says, okay, sounds good to me. Right. At that point, she is making her own decision as an adult that she wants to drop it for money. So, like, what do we do in a situation like that? Do we say, no, you can't make that decision? Or what do we do?
I think it should be the point to where in sex charges specifically, if they do time as well, if they offered to make their payment, they should also pay it as well. I think it should be like a double thing. Like you accept this charge as well, and you owe her money. I think that because sex crimes have a very specific psychological damage and trauma, and therapy and healthcare isn't free in this country. So I think that it is a necessity for you to not only pay your time to the state, but also pay your money to your victim as well.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't really be opposed to that. What do you think should happen for men who are victims of false allegations? Like, what do you think should
If
happen to those women who make false allegations?
I think that it's a whole thing that has to do with the issue of the way our court system works in the first place. Like, you can lie under oath if you want to.
Yeah,
Like, I
sure.
think that
People do
it's
it
a
all the time.
whole problem with that. And I think it's very touchy about people lying, I guess. I think that as far as it would go, I think it would have to be like the same as filing a false police report and lying under oath. I think that it should be treated as though you brought these crimes against this person and now you have to suffer the consequences of doing so. I don't think that it should ever be left unpunished because
Mm.
I think that that could
Yeah,
also
because
induce
usually it is left unpunished. That's the issue. Very rarely do women get punished for that. Almost never
because
happens.
I think that
I had an
oftentimes
incident actually a few months ago where I met up with this chick, and I made a video on this on my YouTube channel. I didn't find her attractive. I told her, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'm just not that interested. I appreciate you coming out, but they're very nice." She leaves. She starts blowing up my phone, saying she's going to go to the police, tell them I raped her, I sexually assaulted her, that her vagina is bleeding. Keep in mind, I saw this girl for 5 seconds. That would be like the quickest rape ever. And it was outside in my building, right? Like outside of my building, right? So there's no way anything could have happened, even if I wanted to. Not that I ever would. And she kept blowing up my phone with these false claims right now. She never went to the police. She never followed up on it, probably because I told her that she would get in a lot of trouble if she did. But, like what should happen in situations like that? Because that happens pretty often too.
I think that you are in all of your right to file a restraining order, to be like, I don't ever want to see this person. I don't ever want them to come near me. I don't ever want them to be able to contact me. I think that should totally be within your right. Because to me, that's the same situation as my ex after he did what he did to me and working less than half a mile from where I lived and showing up at my house all the time. I think that you are within your right. If someone is threatening harm against you, whether it be psychological, whether it be criminal, whatever it is, to protect yourself. And so I think that you should have every right to file a restraining order.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I guess the question is, what if she, like, I'm not like super famous, right? But I am like somewhat of a little bit of a public figure. What if she goes online and starts making videos that, I raped her, right? When I know I didn't. And like, what happens with that? Like that you saw that happen in the Jake Paul situation, right? Like the
I
evidence.
really don't keep up with him, but maybe he
Okay,
did.
the evidence was extremely overwhelmingly that nothing happened. They barely even saw each other, right? And this chick, was claiming that he sexually assaulted her. I think later she went back on it, but nothing happened to her. Like you see this time and time again. So I think in the same token, yeah, sure, punish people who are paying their way out of doing the crime. At the same time, there also needs to be some kind of punishment for women making false claims because they're doing a big disservice to one, the men they're accusing, and two, to sexual assault victims in general.
I agree, but I think that men should never be afraid if they're not guilty, and I think that really needs to be something that
But a
needs
lot of
to
men
be.
are. That's the thing. A lot of
They
men
need to
don't
not
worry.
be, because if a woman is going to claim this, right, and she did what she did to you, she texted you and said that she's going to go to the police, you can blow up those text messages and be like, this is what happened.
Yeah,
You
she's
have
really
that,
dumb. Obviously, most chicks are going to
yeah.
be smarter, and they're not going to text
You
you.
have that burden of proof against yourself, and so I think a lot of men need to understand the chances of you having a false allegation is so low percentage wise, like statistically it's very low, so
I
it
agree
shouldn't
with
be a
you.
fear.
I agree with you. Generally speaking, I agree. Men tend to over worry and overblow it. I agree. Statistically, it's very low. I think it does get higher the more like famous you get. So if you're like someone who's a person of interest, the odds go way up, right? But generally speaking, for the average person, it's really low. Yeah. But a
Yeah.
lot of men are afraid of that, because it destroys your life. Because if you are someone who gets accused of rape, that's like social suicide.
Mhm.
And if you go to jail, ironically, you will be like raped in jail and probably killed, right? Because people who commit sexual crimes are murdered in jail. So it like destroys your life in like every way possible. So I don't know. I think it's a very tricky issue, but I think there needs to be consequences for both parties.
Absolutely, but I think that men miss this conception a lot. They're like, "Oh, this could be social suicide if I'm accused of rape," versus the woman who was possibly raped and now what she's facing. So I think that there's this uneven disparity between the two where it's like, "Oh, I will just not have friends," versus I'm going through this lifetime amount of trauma for the rest of my life. And I think that they compare the two when they're entirely incomparable because
Well,
they're two entirely different
it
situations.
just depends on how far it goes. I mean, if a man is convicted and goes to jail, that's not a joke. Like his life is over. He's going to get raped and killed. Let's say he doesn't go to jail, but let's say it's public. He will probably lose his job, his ability to make a living. He will probably be on the sex offenders list or something like that. So it has very serious consequences. I'm not going to say which one is worse. I don't think it's comparable, but they're both
But
really bad.
legally, the burden of proof is on the woman. Like, legally, the burden of proof is on the woman.
Sure.
Like, she has to prove it. So I think that the fear that goes, oh, I could be in jail, I could be raped and murdered. It's like, did you do it? Because at that point, the burden of proof is on her. We're still innocent
Yeah.
until proven guilty.
Unfortunately, the legal system is far from perfect. There's
Yeah.
the Human Innocence Project, and a whole bunch of people have been sent to jail on death row who are innocent.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's all kinds of issues with that. It also, in terms of what's it called, a woman making a public allegation, like it really does like destroy your life as a man in so many ways. So I think that's like no easy like pill to swallow. Like take a look at the Johnny Depp situation, right? Sure, the burden of proof was on her, right? But when she accused him, he got dropped from the Pirates movie. No one in Hollywood wanted to work with him. He had this bad reputation. So just her making an accusation in which his name wasn't even mentioned, she didn't even say his name. Just the general idea that she was abused so destroyed his life in so many ways. So it's like I think the effects are very, very disastrous.
And I think that wouldn't have happened as much if he was able to have come forward with the abuse that he endured before. Like, if it was more accepted that men could also be victims of domestic violence, I think that this would have been less of a problem unless it happened, and his life wouldn't have been so destroyed if he was able to actually come forward and say, I'm experiencing this abuse from Amber. But I think that we push these societal standards onto men so much to think that they're not allowed to experience these things and be expressive of them.
But the main issue in his life wasn't the abuse he received from Amber, but the consequences of her false allegations in the media. That's at least according to him. So yeah, sure. She hit him multiple times. She like threw shit at him. She called him a loser. Yeah, all that is not cool. But as far as I understand, the main negative impact on his life wasn't from that. It was from from her lying, basically, from her talking out of her
But
ass.
he had left the relationship and he didn't speak about the abuse he had endured with Amber until she came out with her allegations.
Sure.
Like, he didn't feel a need to. And I feel like that really sucks that he didn't feel that he was able to speak out publicly about the abuse that he endured until she had checked him and been like, fuck you.
Yeah, sure. That kind of sucks. But I think it sucks more the fact that she was able to get away with this for like 6 years. Just
Oh,
making
absolutely. But I think that if we had a shift, a mental shift in how we treated abuse victims, especially men abuse victims, I think that he may have been more comfortable in sharing what he experienced, you know, with Amber without feeling like he's going to get backlash.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Yeah, like sure, like it's not cool when men get abused either. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to disagree on that. You know, yeah, and I agree with your point about how men are encouraged not to express their feelings. Sure, I agree with you on that. But you know, in my opinion, that's a small part of the issue. I think there's bigger issues at play that have more disastrous consequences on the lives of men and women. So, you know, what's kind of my take on that? I don't know. I've never been abused by a woman, so I can't really comment on to what effect it has. I don't date abusive women.
I'm happy you don't. I'm very glad that you've had wonderful relationships.
Yeah, my girlfriend is very sweet. All the
awesome.
girlfriends I've ever had. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, but again, going back to the initial point we're talking about, which is third wave feminism, I think the reason that there's pushback is I'm glad you don't hate men, but you can't deny the fact that there are a lot of women who do hate men and blame all their problems on men. And that is an issue. And there's also a lot of men who blame all their problems on women. And that's an issue as well. But you can't ignore one and not the other. They're both.
Have you ever heard of the Fresh and Fit podcast?
Yeah. I made like so many videos calling them out and debating them. And like, yeah, I'm not a fan of them at all.
So my fear, and it's actually starting to happen, is that their audience isn't like grown people their age. Their audience is like anywhere from like 12 to 13 to 18. So they're influencing this very small demographic. And as you said, a bunch of women hate men. These are men hating women. Like, they genuinely dislike women that they can't buy. And so I think that there's this huge issue between both sides, I suppose, that are not being able to understand each other and have a civil conversation. I would love to have a civil conversation with someone like him, but I know that most of what he's doing is simply for money. He doesn't believe the things that he actually says. It's just a money grab.
Well, okay, so that's a whole thing in of itself. I've actually met Myron personally. I've gone out with him way before Fresh and Fit was even a thing. He was actually a big fan of my channel before his channel was created. He'll deny it to the death, but that's a fact. Like, he used to DM me, be like, yo, man, I'm a fan of Playing with Fire. We live down the street. So I've gone out with him. I've seen him interact with women. I can tell you he believes all the stuff he says. None of it is
that sucks so much. That sucks.
Fresh doesn't care. For Fresh, it is a money grab. For Myron, he legitimately believes all the stuff. He's not just talking out of his ass.
He talks a whole lot for a man that's built like a milk dud. He talks so much.
Yeah, but I'm not a fan of those guys. But I don't think most of Fresh and Fit audience actually hates women. I think some do, but I think most of the audience is actually just young, impressionable guys, right, who don't have a strong father figure or male role model, and they're frustrated because they're not successful with women in their own life, and they're just looking for guidance. I don't think they're actually deliberately they hate women. They're just looking for guidance. They're confused and they're lost.
Yeah, but then when that guidance doesn't work because it doesn't work with women that you can't buy, they develop this bitterness against women.
Yeah,
and then the women hating men will interact with specifically those men, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I hate men," because they're interacting with that minority of them that have a typically very large public access.
I see your point. I'll agree with that. Yeah, that can happen. But to be fair, Fresh and Fit has only been on the scene for 2 years. Like, they're pretty recent phenomenon. They only started blowing up in like 2020, 21, very recently, like about a year and a half ago. Versus feminists or women in general who hate men, that's been a thing for like several decades. So
I don't think women hate men. I think
not all, but some.
I think women hate the stereotypes that men put onto women and put onto themselves that create this sort of discourse that masculinity is strictly for men, femininity is strictly for women, and they must follow these social constructs. Well, and I think a lot of this is being broken, and I think they're frustrated a lot.
Well, let me use myself as an example. When you say, we've been talking for an hour and a half, would you say I'm a pretty reasonable, balanced human being?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. Okay. Would you say I hate women?
No, not at all.
Okay. You don't get that vibe from me, right? On TikTok, I get, I don't know, like dozens and dozens of reaction videos every day, countless comments, hundreds of comments, dozens of PMs of women saying the nastiest shit to me ever, that I should die, that I'm a rapist, that I'm a pedophile, that I should kill myself, that I'm a piece of shit, that I'm a woman hater, just projecting all their own bitterness on me, right? So I personally, as someone who's not like an extreme manosphere guy, someone who's pretty reasonable and balanced, I get that all the time, right? It's nonstop on TikTok. All the time I get told to kill myself. So like, what else could that be besides?
I think it's 100% the way that you cut your videos. The way that you cut your videos and the things that you say and the almost shock factor things that you have. Because I've looked at your video statistics, and the ones that have really shocking, almost like, what the
do I say that's so crazy? Like, I don't say anything that's out there. Like, what do I say that's so bad?
The thing about biology is, of course, going to get women upset because that was the same statement used to oppress us for a very, very long time, is that we're biologically not capable of doing certain things. We're biologically shouldn't be able to do these things.
But that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying that I believe people should be able to do whatever they want. I'm just saying all I'm saying is there's some fundamental differences biologically between men and women. That's all I'm saying. Right.
I know, but I think that the way that it's cut and the way that you have it in your videos can present sort of a demeaning manner, which women can find fairly vile. But I think that mostly, if you were like, I think it was the Drew thing that really fucked you, man. I think it was the Drew thing that really fucked you.
Well, the Drew thing, okay, she made a three-minute video just basically calling me ugly. Like, she didn't talk about my content at all. She just insulted my looks. Like, what does that have to do with me at all? Like,
it's just because she has a really big public face, and I can't exactly remember the video that you made, but it was something sort of demeaning women wise, and so she.
Well, okay, so let me tell you. So she okay. So I'll sum it up for you. She made a 3-minute video. She drew first blood, so she reacted to me first. I didn't even know who she was. Made a video, 3-minute video, and all she did was attack my look, saying I'm ugly. I look like a pumpkin. I look like this or that. It was just all nonstop personal attacks on my looks. There was zero like arguments against my content, right? It was just all look-based attacks. I made a response video to that, and the only point I made, I was like, first of all, I appreciate this, like, I was kind of sarcastic. I was like, oh, thank you for the compliments. I was going to say, I find it really ironic that she spends this video attacking my looks, right, when she's not that attractive herself. So it's like people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Now, again, I was just responding to someone who spent 3 minutes calling me vile things, and all I said was people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? So who was more extreme in this situation, right? Like if you have to weigh those things, I think I'm like.
Could you screen share the video that she was reacting to?
Yeah, I can do that.
I'm just curious of the initial one, because I feel like I watched it, but I don't remember which one it
was. Yeah, let's do that.
I'm trying to see what she was mad about, because I can't remember it.
Okay, yeah. So you want to see the initial video that she responded to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know which one it is. I have to pull it up.
I think my neighbors are shooting guns off their porch again.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah, I'm out in the country. They like doing that shit.
Oh, yeah? Where you at?
Out in buttfuck Texas.
I used to live in Texas, actually. I used to live in Austin.
I miss the city. I miss Austin. It's so nice there.
Yeah, Austin was cool. I would want to visit one day. Okay, I have to. I made the video private. Okay, I'll make it public. Okay, wait. I need to go into privacy settings. We can watch this video, everyone. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we can do it. So, okay, there we go. I found it.
Playfully ask.
Okay, let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, here's the full video in its original form.
Oh, yes.
Frequently ask a girl that you're talking to from a dating app if she's actually overweight. So this is a text that's pretty funny. So talking to
Okay.
making logistics. Awesome. All your pics are headshots. You aren't a secret fatty, are you? Now, it may sound a little crude, but it's also fairly amusing. Generally speaking, you get good reactions. Oh, geez, now that's a question. Remember I said I don't take pics of myself? That's why I only have selfies. I would definitely not classify myself as fat, blah, blah, blah. So she's basically saying that she's got tits and ass. So then you say, guys are always scared of being getting famished, but no, I prefer thick women, not really into skinny girls. Let's meet up, blah, blah, blah. She's like, girls are always scared of getting catfish. So you can see that that's a very good way to bring up the question. Now, of course, the ideal thing to do is just ask for her Instagram, but she doesn't have Instagram. She doesn't have any photos showing her body. This is what you can say as a last resort.
Okay, so that's the video. So I don't really see anything extreme about that video.
Okay. I'm going to ask a very personal question. I'm not going to be offended by whatever the answer is.
Go ahead.
How much do you think I weigh?
You really want me to answer that?
Absolutely. How much do you think I weigh?
How tall are you? I would need to know that first.
5'2".
Okay, you're probably 180.
Close. I'm about 188. Close.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm considered a heavier woman. And so like you can look at me and you know that I've got some meat on me. Like you can see that.
Right,
Guess my weight fairly accurate. So I think that the issue was one, the whole fatty part, that was a little much. That was a little unnecessary. Just because to me, fat isn't a derogatory term. I know my size. I know what I am. It's never going to hurt me.
It's not intended to be. The goal is not to put anyone down.
I know, but it can be derogatory for a lot of women because eating disorders are most common in women. So it can be considered derogatory and it can be offensive to women. So that was one of the main things that she took issue with. Now, Drew was known for if you throw stones, she'll throw them back at you with like full force. No. So if you're talking about fat women, she's going to call you ugly and bald. That's just how she works. And it's not always fair, but her issue was the derogatory language that was used. And if you can't tell what a woman looks like by her body, and you cannot ask in a kind way for full body pictures or explain your preferences in a nice way, then you probably shouldn't be dating.
Okay. Yeah. Let me respond to that. So what she said in the video, and what a lot of people have said is that I'm fat phobic, right? Phobia is like a fear of something or discrimination against something, right? I'm not fat phobic at all. Like I'm friends with women who are overweight. It doesn't affect my ability to be friends with them. I'm just simply sexually not attracted to certain body types, right? I'm also not attracted to ultra skinny girls, right? I'm not skinny phobic. I'm just not attracted to girls who look like skeletons, right? So that's just me, and I'm entitled to my preferences, just like a woman is entitled to her preferences to not date shorter guys or guys with bad teeth or whatever. So she used that term, fat phobic. That's completely incorrect. That's the first thing. Second thing is, yes, I can tell more or less about you because we're talking, and your thing is from your chest up, right? So I can tell. But if you had just headshots, I probably wouldn't be able to tell, right? So it just depends on the amount of photos a girl shows. Some girls, now look, most women who are overweight are just upfront about it. They just will show regular photos because they're just own what they are, which that's good, right? But some women can be a little sneaky, and they try to use either old photos or photos with like angles and lighting to make themselves look like something they're not, right? And what I said in the video is the first go-to obviously is to ask for her social media, ask for Instagram, ask for all that. But if she doesn't have clear photos and she doesn't have any social media and she doesn't have Instagram, right? At that point, you should have options. So you need to find out, if you're not sexually attracted to overweight women, what the rest of her looks like. And that's one way to go about it.
Okay, she said that you were fat phobic simply because one, you use the fatty stuff, you use derogatory language, and two, it's not from the fear of fat people. It's from the reason that a lot of fat women, including myself, I will post my body. I don't give a shit. I think I'm hot as fuck, so I don't really care. But they will not post their body and only their face, not because they want to fool anybody into thinking that they're skinny, but because a lot of men who have body issues themselves will seek out fat women, whether it be on dating apps, whether it be on social media, and criticize them simply for existing because they're fat.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should harass anyone.
Exactly. So it's not that fat women are trying to deceive anybody into being skinny. Now, will there be people that will?
There's some who are.
But a large majority won't. It's literally a barrier for themselves so they don't get this unnecessary hate with people they've never even interacted with, that they didn't ask for. So it's okay to ask someone, and it's okay to literally be like, these are my preferences. But there's a difference between saying these are my preferences and to show me if you've got stretch marks and a tummy. Like, there's just, you have to go about it a certain way that's respectful, or else it's just blatant disrespect, which is what I personally have a problem with, is blatant disrespect.
But how is fat a hate term? That's just what is a more politically correct way to say that? Like I didn't know
So just
that.
don't ask, be like, yo, are you a fat bitch? Like, that's just, it's not okay to ask like that.
Okay.
Because for a lot of women, they have a lot of issues with their weight and self-esteem, and they get regular hate comments regularly. Like, not like,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not advocating that. But it's okay. So
Yeah.
how would you recommend that a guy ask this? What's a better way to ask it?
So, I mean, I think the social media thing is a great approach. I think you should have really stopped there. But I think the social media thing,
the videos, if she doesn't have social media. So let's assume she doesn't have social media. How should you ask her?
if she doesn't have social media, there are a ton of different things that you can ask a woman to find out about, like, the size of her body without being like, are you a fat bitch?
So what give me an example. Like, what should I do?
So you could, like, one, you could explain your preferences, what you're looking for in a person. You can explain your type that you would like. You could start with that, but it's very crude to just ask someone if they're fat. It's
Well,
just
I acknowledge that in
nice.
the video. I'm like, this is a little crude. So give me, like, help me figure this out. Like, how can I phrase that?
Okay, you could just start by, like, naming your preferences, what you're looking for in a partner, what they're looking for in a partner. You can even straight up ask. You can start out and send a full body picture and be like, this is what I'm more comfortable with. I'm more comfortable seeing full body pictures of each other. Would you be comfortable sharing that? It's just asking politely and going with a polite approach is better than being crude.
Okay, so you say, hey, can I see a full body photo? And she says, oh, why? What do you say?
Be like, I'm trying to compare my preferences, or just ask and be like, hey, I am attracted to this and I would like to just see your
So
full
you would
body.
say
But
something like, I'm attracted to skinnier women, so I want to see if you fall into that criteria.
I wouldn't word it like that, no.
So how would you word it?
I would just say my preferences are more athletic appearing women, for one. That way you don't just put skinny women, because that's can be a little touchy for some women. I'm not saying you have to tiptoe around everything, but just be cautious with what words you use. Don't be derogatory just because you have the balls to be.
Well,
If
I
that
don't
makes sense.
see, the thing is, I don't see fat as a derogatory term. I mean, it certainly can be used as a derogatory term. If I'm like, you're fat, yeah, that is derogatory. But the way it's used in that situation, I don't see it as derogatory.
But you said a fatty. Like, it's not, that was derogatory. The way in which it was used was derogatory.
Well, it was used in a humorous way, right? I'm trying to make it light out of a serious situation.
But humorous to someone's physical appearance, which is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, like female comedian, like Lisa Lampanelli does it all the time. Like, she's an overweight girl and she constantly jokes about it. So
okay, it's because she's an overweight girl that's comfortable with it. But if you're not an overweight girl, that overweight girl might not be comfortable with you insulting her.
Right, but the goal again is not to insult the girl, right? The goal is to, it's a potentially very sensitive question, and there's really no good way. That's kind of what I was getting at. There's really no good way to phrase that. There's just better, of course,
better ways than going, you're a fatty.
Well, you're not saying you're a fatty. You're saying, I want to make sure you're not a secret fatty, right? So the goal is to figure out what she looks like in a potentially humorous way to take some of the pressure off the situation. Now, believe it or not, that line has like a 90% success rate, like meaning 90% of women laugh and say, haha, no, I'm not. I'm going to send you a photo. So if you're arguing that there's a better way to phrase that, okay, I'm open to that. Maybe there is. Maybe there are better ways to phrase that. Maybe
it's just a better way of going about it. I think that was Drew's whole issue, was that the fat phobia.
But she didn't say any of that, Rose. She didn't say, Alex, there's better ways to phrase that. She just spent 3 minutes calling me ugly.
Because she's a very blunt and aggressive bitch, and that's how she'll always be. I appreciate it.
How does that get to the bottom of this issue?
It doesn't. She doesn't care. Like, her interest.
I know she doesn't care.
Her interest is not necessarily to get you to change your mind. Her interest is to tell you, go fuck yourself, because what you said was fucked up.
Her interest is to put people down and make herself look good.
No, it's not, because she talks a lot about people that are genuinely misogynistic people, and she has no interest in changing their mind, because the majority of them would never change their mind. And she knows that. She knows that a majority of them would never change their mind no matter what she says. So
Correct.
instead of attempting to and taking the time like I would, because that's just what I do, she says, fuck you, you're ugly too, which to me is just as effective and honestly a little bit funnier.
No, it's not. That's not going to get anyone to change their mind. It's just going to create backlash. Like
because she knows they're not going to change their mind. Like if you look at a majority of her videos and the dudes that she stitches, they say some of the most heinous shit about women, not just about fat bitches, about women. And she knows that they're not going to change their mind. She knows that she couldn't do or say anything that's going to make them change their mind, especially because they already see her like that and they already make videos to try to grab her attention. She's not going to change their mind.
Drew's entitled to run her channel any way she wants. If she wants to make mean-spirited videos one after another, she's entitled to do that, and that's fine. Whatever. I could care less. She can just be a mean, nasty human being, and she's entitled to do that, right? I don't care. But I don't see what that has to do with me, because I'm not a misogynistic person, right? At all. Like, I just have one video where there's one line where a girl doesn't have social media. I advocate making a joke. And you can make the argument that joke is at the expense of someone. Okay, that could be a potential fair argument. But it's certainly not fatphobic, or it's certainly not intended to demean anybody. And I think you'd be really hard-pressed to make that argument.
That was her whole issue with you, was the way that you worded it and the way that you approached the subject was just very negative. It was in the sense that you want to make sure you don't get with a fat bitch. That was the whole attitude of it. So that was her problem.
Am I not entitled? But am I not entitled to that preference to not want to?
You're entitled to your preference, but it's the way it was presented that was the problem. It was the way it was presented of, this is how you never get with a fat bitch. This is how you avoid a fat bitch, as if fat bitches are a problem in themselves.
No, they're not. If you're interested,
exactly.
If you're into that, sure. But
so I think it was just the way that you approached the subject and the way that you handled it, I think, was one of her main issues. And also, you are allowed to throw an insult at me because I threw a very big one at you, and I'm sorry, not really.
What did you say?
On one of your videos, I commented, "You're a short bus, Hank Hill."
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm not gonna insult you, whatever.
I was about to say, if you want to, it's free game. I threw one at you.
No, I mean, no, you've been pretty chill. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that. I didn't even honestly know about that comment, but it's whatever. Not a big deal. I get told way worse things on the reg as well. If you want to make the argument that that could have been worded in a more sensitive, better way, then sure, I would probably agree with you. I'm sure there's better ways that you can word that. But again, just because there's better ways to word something that's potentially more sensitive doesn't make me fatphobic or fat anything, right? Those two are different things. Fatphobic means I have some kind of discrimination against overweight people where I think they're less of a person. That's not the case.
Doesn't mean that you have to think they're less of a person. It just means that you discriminate against them. And the basis of that video and how you treated it, you were. Even if it was just in your preferences, the way that you approached the subject and the way that you reacted to the person wasn't a discriminatory manner, which was the whole problem.
But then you would have to concede that pretty much every single girl on Tinder is short phobic because pretty much every girl asks you about your height.
What?
Then you would have to, if you go down this logical track, you would have to make the argument that pretty much every girl on Tinder is short phobic because girls constantly ask you, how tall are you? Only guys above 6'0".
Let me explain the short thing. I would love to explain this. I have dated all kinds of men, and I have noticed that among the short ones, I don't know what it is about short men. I don't know what courses evil, maybe it goes with your biological statement, what evil courses through their veins, but they are so much meaner and so much more egotistical and so much more arrogant than any other man that I've ever dated. And it has always been the short men that I've dated. I don't know if it's just me personally, but I think it is an insecurity thing. I think that
okay, but Rose, I see where you're going with this, and I'm not even going to necessarily disagree with you much, but couldn't a guy make that same exact argument and be like, I've dated all kinds of women. I've dated bigger women, smaller women. I don't know why, but something about bigger women is just they're just the worst. I don't know what it is.
But as the argument goes that men like to use, women can lose weight. You can change your weight or whatever that men like to use. But men are stuck being short. Unless you want to go get that weird knee surgery, you're stuck being short. Yeah. So it's this lifelong thing.
So it's even worse.
For some short men, they internalize. And I wish it wasn't. I wish y'all wouldn't internalize it because I like short men. I'm short. I can't handle a dude over 5'9". That's too tall. There's too much going on. So I feel bad, but like
You're sort of the
there's
exception that you're cool dating shorter guys. Most women do not want to date guys shorter than
no,
them.
there are a lot of women that don't give a fuck about height. They give a fuck about the attitude that comes with a short man. And I don't know what it is, but I've talked to a lot of women about this because I've had the same thing. I'm like, I don't think you should discriminate against height because I think it's ridiculous. Like a man can't control how tall he is. I think that's stupid. And I've talked to women about it, and they're like, it has very little to do with their height and a lot to do with their
Yeah,
attitude
I
because of
think
their
that's
height.
women just trying to rationalize why. I think a woman is fully allowed if she doesn't want to date shorter guys. That's totally okay. She's entitled to her sexual preferences. A woman doesn't have to date a shorter guy she doesn't want to. I don't see that as problematic at all. And there's biological reasons. I know you love that term. Why women are attracted to taller guys, because your offspring is more likely to be taller, right? And you want that because your offspring is more likely to succeed. So
I don't.
anyway, so
I'm sorry.
the point I'm making is there's legitimate reasons why women are not attracted to shorter guys, and there's legitimate reasons why men are not attracted to bigger women, and it has nothing to do with any kind of phobia. It just has to do with sexual preferences.
Biologically, men should be attracted to more women. It shows that they're better likely to carry.
Well, no, because as men, we want from a biological perspective, we want our our genes to carry on. And a woman who is overweight, she is more likely to have health conditions and less likely to live a longer life. That's why also men are attracted to women who have big butts, right? Because big butts mean big hips, and big hips mean she's going to have an easy time whelping children, right? So all of this stuff usually stems back to
big butts. I don't think are a biological thing. I think that was just Kim K got some work done, and everybody was like, "Oh, I fuck with that."
No, because big butts usually mean big hips, right? You can't have a small butt on big hips, or I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's rare. Usually, it's the big hips that's the underlying factor, and big hips again mean that the woman is more likely to be able to give birth to children.
But I don't inherently like the biological argument because then it completely discriminates against people that are gay. Because I like women as well, so I don't understand the whole
In
men
which way
are
does it discriminate?
because
How?
it says that men are supposed to be attracted to larger hips or bigger breasts or whatever, but then the men that are gay, why aren't they biologically attracted to that? Because they're gay. So
Because
then I don't understand.
because for every rule there's an exception. So yes, there's going to be some men who are more attracted to bigger women. There's going to be some men who are attracted to stick thin women. There's going to be some men who are attracted to men. For every rule, there's many exceptions.
So then I don't think that's inherently a biological factor if everyone's preferences are going to be different.
No, because we're looking at overall, we're looking at generalities. Most men, are going to be attracted to a certain type of girl. But of course,
Most straight men. But then
Yeah.
you have gay men, and if we're going to say
again, gay men are the exception. Only a small percentage of men are gay. Maybe 5% or something, or 2%. I don't know. It's a small percentage.
What is that statistic?
It's small. I mean, I don't know even how they would get that, because a lot of men are secretly gay. They're in the closet, so they won't admit it.
Oh, I know. I was doing a ton of research on that whenever I was looking into the disparity between sexual assault victims of men and women, and how many unreported cases there are with men, and an alarming amount of them were gay men that didn't want to report that they were assaulted by another man, and it was kind of insane.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is an interesting point. It's kind of crudely written, but I agree with that. Being gay goes against the natural law of reproduction, so it's obviously a deviation from the natural law. It's written crudely, but that's basically the simple truth that, yeah, when you're gay, you're kind of the exception to the rule of reproduction or whatever, because you're not even thinking at that point about whelping children, because whatever.
Wait, why? Because you're gay, would you not think about children?
You're not gonna, if you're gay, that's counterproductive to the idea of you having children and passing on your offspring. Being gay cannot help you in any way in having children. That can only work against you in terms of that.
But why would having a child not be considered just because you're gay? I'm not understanding that.
Well, do you think that being gay is productive or counterproductive to having children?
I think that it doesn't really affect either, because we have things such as surrogates, so I don't think it really affects either.
Right, but your genes don't know about surrogates or anything like that. You're genetically, humans are designed to live long enough just to pass on their offspring, right? We didn't used to live that long for a very long time. And of course, technology has changed a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, being gay is kind of an exception to the to our natural instinct to pass on our genes, and that's totally okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with being gay or anything like that at all. That's not what I'm saying. I just want to be clear on that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but it is, going against your biological instinct to spread your seed. Because if you fuck a guy, you're not going to get him pregnant, right?
So you think that people are not born biologically gay?
No, I think very much gay is something you're born with. I don't think it's like, no, I don't think you're
Okay, so then if biologically you're gay, how does it go against your biological nature?
Because for every rule, there's exceptions. So some people, like, DNA mutates or whatever, genes mutate, right? So whatever, for every rule, there's an exception, right? Having any number of, I'm not equating being gay to having a disease, but I'm just using a simple analogy. When you have a disease, right? Why are people born with like weird conditions, right? That cause them to die at the age of 15, right? That's not like productive to passing on your genes, but it happens. So being gay is like, yeah, it's like your genes going in their own direction. Because again, gene mutation, all that stuff happens. I don't really know the full science of like how someone becomes gay, but yeah, it's something that happens at birth.
It's not genetically transferred. That's what's so interesting about sexuality. Sexuality has nothing to do with genetic transfer. Like you can't transfer your sexuality to your child.
I'm not saying that at all. No, I don't think that either. I'm just saying that it's something that happens when a child is born. I don't think it's transferred. I don't know exactly what it is, but you are more or less born gay, right? It's not something that you just become because of experiences. So generally speaking, you're born gay. Yeah, that's counterproductive to your goal of spreading your seed. Again, like, I don't think that's like a controversial opinion. I think most gay people would probably agree with me on that.
Yeah, that's biological, but then I don't know.
I don't think that's like a controversial opinion though. Like, I think that's just like pretty straightforward, like logic. Like you pass on your seed when you have sex with a woman, right? Without a condom, right? So something like being born, without sperm, that's counterproductive to whatever, passing on your seed. Something like dying in infancy is counterproductive to that. Something like, I don't know, like having a small penis, micro penis, that's counterproductive to that. And something like being born gay is also counterproductive to passing on your seed. It is what it is. Not everyone has to have kids, right? That's a good thing.
This was not a good idea to do this 6 shots in and drink 3 beers.
I like how you've been progressively drinking through this podcast.
Oh, fuck yeah, man.
I mean, we've been going for like 3 hours, so I do kind of want to wrap up. I mean, I'd be more than happy to have you on again, but is there anything else you want to discuss real quick, or?
The weird alpha versus beta male. I don't get it.
Yeah, we can talk. Let's talk about it real quick. Sure. So what was your take on that?
Why?
Why what exactly? Like
why does there need to be a distinction between 2 different personalities of men rather than just a man having different characteristics and they're just a man? Why do they need to fall into these subcategories? And why does one have to be better than the other?
I don't think one is better from a value perspective as a human being, right? I don't think beta men are like less of a human than an alpha male. However, we can't deny the fact that that beta men just get destroyed in modern dating, and alpha men, women are generally more attracted to alpha men. Like, that's just a fact that happens all the time. Women like men who are confident, assertive, who are leaders, and beta men are none of those things. So I think it's good for guys, if they want to be successful when it comes to dating, to work on becoming more alpha.
Okay.
Like, if I had a kid and he was a straight kid and he was like, Dad, I want to meet a girl. I want to have a good, I heard about your stories with playing with fire. I want to have some fun too. I'd be like, okay, well, he's like, should I be beta or should I be alpha? I'd be like, you probably want to work on being more alpha.
Okay. So then does alpha and beta not apply to gay men?
No, I think it applies. I just don't think it's as important because I think it's really easy for gay guys to get laid, generally speaking.
Okay.
I also think it's a little bit different with gay. Again, I'm not like super like well versed in like the gay culture, but I do know some things about it, and I know there's bottoms and tops, right? And so generally the top is going to be like the more dominant one and the bottom is going to be the more submissive one. So it's a little different, I think, in the gay culture because you need a nice balance of those. So you need like some alpha guys, some beta guys. If you have all alpha guys and everyone wants to be a top, then like what the fuck? And if you have all beta guys and everyone wants to be a bottom, then what the fuck? You kind of need a nice balance there. So I think it's less important in the gay community than it is certainly in the straight dating community. Yeah.
Why do you think women are more attracted to alpha than beta males?
Because I've seen evidence of this time and time again.
Evidence as in what?
Of women being more attracted to men who are confident, assertive, dominant, who lead.
And what professions do those women typically hold?
All kinds of professions. All professions. I don't think this has anything to do with professions. I mean, do you disagree with that statement? Do you think alpha and beta guys have the same kind of success rate when it comes to dating?
I don't think it exists. And
what do you not think exists? Do you think there's guys who are more confident, dominant, and assertive than other guys?
no, absolutely. But I don't think that defining your personal characteristics between two different types of a man and thinking that you're more successful because you have these single characteristics with women is just, I think it's kind of stupid.
I mean, I think go ahead.
I think it's a fun concept, but I mean, I think that I think it's damaging to men because I think that it causes competitiveness within men for women who are sitting here like, what the fuck is wrong with both of you?
Yeah, the competitiveness already exists. Men are very competitive, generally speaking, when it comes to women. It just is what it is. I think that, yeah, it's probably overly simplistic. There's a lot more to it than that. Of course, it's not just alpha or beta, and there's different levels of it. You can be partially alpha, partially beta. If you watch like my long form content on YouTube, I make this content that you can't be alpha when it comes to everything. Like I'm pretty alpha when it comes to, I don't know, doing debates or talking to girls. But if you put me in like in a boardroom meeting with a bunch of like finance people talking about something I know nothing about, then I'm probably going to be a lot more beta, right? So I don't think it's like you can be 100% alpha when it comes to everything. You can't lead in all times. You can't always be assertive, right? So I agree there's nuance to it. But generally speaking, you know, you do have to generalize and you have to use some terminology that people can understand. Not everything can be ultra nuanced. Alpha guys are going to have a way easier time when it comes to dating than beta guys. That just is what it is. If we're talking about overly simplified one versus the other. But of course, there's different degrees and levels of it.
Then why do you think men that present more feminine and more emotionally like open are starting to be more what women view as what they want?
I haven't seen any evidence of those emotionally sensitive guys actually like who are more feminine having any success in dating marketplace. I've coached some guys that fall in that category. And from what I've seen, they struggle quite a lot. I mean, keep in mind, I've coached at this point thousands of guys. I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen it all. I've coached ultra rich guys, ultra poor guys, old guys, young guys, jack guys, skinny guys, tall guys, short guys, every type of guy, alpha, beta, every type of thing in between, overly confident, narcissistic, like everything and anything. And so I've seen some patterns, and I have a lot of peers who I talk to. We've all seen patterns, and we go over them. But yeah, like this is what I see. Guys women typically, what's attractive is sexual polarity, right? More or less. So the polarity between masculine and feminine, right? So if you're a guy who lacks that sexual polarity, you're less likely to be attractive to women. Doesn't mean you can't get a girl, but you're going to be less attractive, right? And simultaneously, a woman who's more feminine is going to be more attractive to the opposite sex. Sexual polarity is, quite attractive.
So would you say, okay, if I were a dude, would you say I would be an alpha or a beta?
I don't know how to answer that. You're not a dude though. Like you're a chick.
No, but come on, just like based on the way that we've talked.
But if you were born male, you would be different. Like you wouldn't be the same person.
No, I still want this answer, man. Please.
I'm not trying to dodge your question. I just don't know how I can answer that. Like if you would have like 100 times the testosterone surging through your veins, I think that would make you largely different in your personality. I don't know how to answer that question. I can tell you as a woman where you are in the sexual polarity ladder, but I can't tell you hypothetically if you were a man and we're a completely different human being, what you would be. There's no way to answer that question.
Okay, as a woman, where do I fall then? I don't even know the categories of a woman.
On the sexual polarity ladder, again, I've also known you for like less than 2 hours, so I don't know you super well. But for what I've seen, I would say you're fairly in the middle. You're like, so if we take girls who are like super feminine and then super masculine on the other hand, I'd say you're actually somewhat in the middle. That's
Okay.
that's kind of my assessment. You're not super feminine, but you're not like a masculine chick either.
So, that's really funny that you say that, because normally I'm, I guess, a very masculine presenting woman, like most of the time. My actions and the way that I do things, I guess, are very masculine.
You're not ultra confrontational. You're not ultra assertive. You don't really have a strong masculine presence. No, I mean, you're not super feminine either. Like if we put you and my girlfriend in the room, like she's going to be way more feminine, yeah, more girly. But yeah, I know girls who are way more masculine than you.
I don't know. I can't understand.
You're surprised by the answer. I mean, what kind of answer were you expecting?
No. That's actually close to the answer I was expecting. But I can't understand how men can coach other men on what women would like, rather than listen to women on what women would like.
Well, my experience is okay. So that's a whole different question. That's a fair question. So everything I teach is not stuff that I just like sit around and pull out of my ass. It's stuff that has worked. So it's based on my experience and the experience of my clients, right? On what attracts women, right? I've been fortunate enough to have quite a successful dating history. I've been with hundreds of women, right? I've coached hundreds of men who've all been with women, right? So I have a pretty big bag of reference experiences to draw from. And from that, I use my pattern recognition skills to see, okay, what are some of the patterns here? So what's it called? Now, women who have a high level of self-awareness, they usually know exactly what attracts them, what doesn't. But most women, and just people in general, it's not a women thing. Most people don't have that much self-awareness. So they're in denial about what triggers them, what turns them on, what drives them. They don't really understand the stuff. I've done podcasts with multiple female dating coaches, some of the most well-renowned ones in the industry, Kezia Noble, Marnie, your wing girl. I don't know if these names mean anything to you, but they're all popular. They have like close to 1 million subs each. They're the most respected female dating coaches on the planet, and they all largely agree with me on pretty much every point, right? Because they all have a high level of self-awareness because they're coaching, they've been doing this for a while, blah, blah, blah. So when I talk to women who have a high level of self-awareness, they largely agree with me about everything I say.
Okay.
It's usually like random TikTokers who disagree with me. It's not like actual female dating coaches or like female sex experts or anything like that. I had what's her name? I forget, the chick with the short hair. She's like a sex scientist expert. Largely agree with everything I said. Like, right? Not much disagreement.
Me personally, I like very feminine presenting men. That's just what I'm attracted to. And a lot of women that I've met more are starting to like agree with that and are starting to be more attracted to, like, when I say feminine, I mean what society views as feminine traits, such as emotional openness, not as authoritative, more agreeable and genuinely caring, have more almost like maternal characteristics, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so
yeah. I think in order to really get to the bottom of this, we'd have to look at your dating history and like look at what kind of guys you've actually dated. That would be
all kinds.
Right. Okay. So is there any patterns there? Like your last boyfriend, was he assertive?
Sadly, yeah.
Okay. Let's go to your boyfriend before that. Was he assertive?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Was he dominant?
No.
Was he like kind of like a leader? Was he confident?
He was confident, but he didn't really lead. I led most of the relationship.
Okay. Let's go to the boyfriend before that. Was he assertive? Was he confident?
Very. He was very dominant, very assertive, very arrogant.
Okay. So we're at 2 out of 3. I mean, we can keep going further back, but like, yeah, like, I mean, clearly you are somewhat attracted to alpha guys.
The one before that wasn't, though. It's just
okay. So we're 2 out of 4.
So
maybe you have very eclectic taste. I don't know. You could have very eclectic taste. That's fine.
I just think that men oftentimes consider their own experiences with women as what women want. And so I think that's like it causes a huge discourse between men and women rather than men asking women, what do you think about this? How do you feel about this? What is your opinion on this? They go, I've experienced this with women. They must like this.
Well, I think that asking women, what do you want, unless the woman has a very high level of self-awareness and she trusts you, you're not going to get a genuine answer quite often. Like, for example, there was this chick that I had on my YouTube channel, Carla. It's like my most popular video. And we were shooting a video, and I was like, yo, let's do a video what women want. And I was like, what would be your answer to that question? She's like, I think women just want a guy who's like really respectful and patient and like just like
the bare minimum.
Yeah, kind of just like keeps like kind of very like respects my boundaries. I'll be like, Carla, what are you talking about? You like to be called a dirty little slut, and you like to be slapped around, and you like to be fucked hard, and you like dominant guys. She's like, yeah, but that's just me. I'm like, no, it's not just you. That's a lot of girls.
But
like,
you're comparing someone's sexual preference in bed to what they want in a person, because my boyfriend can be very dominant in bed, but I own the entire relationship. That's how this dynamic works.
But what I'm saying is, you often, when you ask that question, you don't get genuine answers unless
you get respectful, kind, understanding, because that's the bare minimum that we have for men right now. We don't care about your financial situation or your credit score or your success in sports.
No one's saying that matters. I don't think that matters at all. But I do think confidence, assertiveness, that matters.
But I think that women are saying respectfulness and understanding and compassion and these basic things because that's our bare minimum.
Right. Like, women are saying that's what's priority. But I think quite often, if you look at their dating history, they're dating more of the confident, cocky alpha guy. And that's the pattern I've seen time and time again.
I don't know what women you're talking to.
Well, I mean, like, we're just talking about your dating history. Two of the guys you dated, 2 out of 4, were more alpha guys, confident, assertive, dominant.
And I've got restraining orders on both of them.
Okay, but you still dated them. I'm not saying you should harass women. There's grand total of 0 restraining orders on me, right? I'm consider myself quite confident and assertive, but I certainly don't like harass any girl.
But I'm saying that a woman's dating history is not going to be expressive of her taste in men.
I actually think her dating history is the most important thing that matters. You have to look at what a woman does instead of what she says that she does. Those two can be quite different.
Do you care about a woman's body count?
Okay, now we're getting something different. Are we talking me personally, or do men do?
Both. I'm just curious.
Okay, so it depends on for what. If we're talking about just for hooking up, no, I don't. I've hooked up with chicks who've been with hundreds of guys. I don't care. If we're talking about for dating, I think it plays a little bit of a role. I mean, like it depends on whether it's reasonable or not, and it also depends on her age. Like if she's like 30 years old, which is like my age, she's been with like 10, 20 guys, that's like totally fine. If she's been with like 200 guys at the age of 30 and she doesn't work in the adult industry, I would wonder if she has like some self-esteem problems or something like that. But I can tell you most guys are not like me. Most guys actually do care, so a lot more.
But I don't understand why they would care, because there's a huge attitude difference between when a man gets laid versus when a woman gets laid.
I agree with you.
So, I don't understand why that's there. Like, we're both just fucking. So why does the attitude towards both have to differ?
So I see your point. I think a lot of it has to do with because it's completely different for a man and a woman. So for a guy who gets a lot of just hear me out. Don't laugh.
Yeah,
when a guy who's been with hundreds of girls, it takes a lot of skill. You can't be a fat slob and get with hundreds of girls. You need to be charming, charismatic, or you need to be famous, right? It's not just going to happen. As a girl, it takes close to 0 skill to get laid, right? You don't need to do any of those things. You can just literally line guys up like Domino's Pizza from Tinder, right? It's really easy as a girl to rack up 100 bodies. You could literally do that in like a month, right? If you want to. So the point I'm saying is there's a massive difference in skill, right? For one, it's really hard, and for one, it's really easy. So I think that's why you see that big discrepancy in the attitude. I'm not necessarily saying it's right. I don't think girls should be stigmatized for having a lot of sex. I'm not a fan of that, but I'm just answering your question.
But I don't think it's hard for men to get laid. I think they make it hard for themselves to get laid.
Rose. No, it is really.
I don't think so. I don't think it's hard for men to get laid because
What are you basing that on?
My fucking experience with men.
But you're a woman. You've never been a man. How do you know?
What do you mean?
You're a woman. How do you know what it's like for men?
Like as far as them getting laid?
Yeah, like are you going off your male friends or who are you going off?
The dudes I have slept with and the
Right,
dudes I have talked to about it.
but do you think that maybe the guys you've slept with are the guys who are not having a hard time, and maybe the guys that are having a hard time are guys you've never even talked to?
I don't think so because
Do
I
you think
think
there could
dudes.
be a sample bias here? Because I think there's a massive sample bias here.
What do you mean?
Like meaning the guys that you slept with are the guys that other girls are sleeping with because they have qualities that are attractive.
They really didn't, but okay.
Well, I mean, they slept with you, so they had enough game to get you. I'm assuming you have some standards, right?
Oh, absolutely. But I'm just saying that talking to them, it doesn't seem difficult. I think men make it difficult on themselves because of their competitiveness. Like they're very competitive in nature.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how to say this with respect, but with respect, I think you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to this. Like I've done many experiments on my channel. Like for example, I'll just kind of walk you through it. We did an experiment. We took a male model, right, and we created a Tinder profile for him, and we wanted to see how many matches or likes he would get in 24 hours. He got 140 likes in 24 hours. Then we took a really attractive female, and she got 2,000 likes in 24 hours. Then we took an overweight, unattractive girl, like we're talking like 300 pounds, like very unattractive, conventionally, created a Tinder profile for her. She got 500 likes in 24 hours. Guys were begging her to hang out. So that means a very unattractive girl does 5 times better than a very, very attractive guy. Do you see how the marketplace can be skewed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of women don't really understand the struggle. I can tell you my girlfriend certainly didn't. And then we started, I don't know how to say this without giving away too much personal info. I'm just going to be vague. We started looking for other girls on the internet for whatever reason you can imagine. And then she realized that.
I've been a unicorn. It's cool. You can be honest.
Then no, I'm just because her privacy, I want to respect it.
Gotcha.
And then we realized, and then she realized that she was completely wrong about a lot of her assumptions, and that it's actually way harder than she thought to get girls. We were having a conversation one day, and she's like, Alex, she's like, because she says a lot of the same stuff you say when it comes to this. She's like, Alex, I think you're making it harder than it is to meet a cool guy. I met you. I was like, okay, how many guys did it take you to get to me? She's like, well, 2. I'm like, okay, it took me like 100 girls to get to one of you, right? There's massive discrepancy. Like I had to go through hundreds of girls to find you. You only had to go through 2 guys to find me.
But I think you also have to take into consideration the standards difference between men and women as well. Women have very low standards for men. Like
I think it's the opposite. Men have way lower standards for women than women. I think women are way pickier than men.
I think that women, as far as men go, want someone that respects them, someone that is willing to communicate with them openly, and someone that is willing to possibly move their perspective if need be, and someone that's willing to compromise. I think it's what most women want. I think that the difference between the two is what's causing so much discourse, is what you're saying, is what makes things so much more difficult between men and women, because men will care. Men about that larger woman that you said was unattractive, they probably just wanted to fuck her. But if they were to go publicly in a relationship with her, they would be less likely to. Does that make sense?
I'm a little confused. I mean, I get emails from those guys in messages all the time. I coach them. The guys that are like more sensitive, more kind of in line with what you're talking about. And they're like, I don't understand it, Alex. I'm being respectful. I'm being empathetic, and I'm having zero success. Right. And then we maybe get them to start becoming a little bit more confident, assertive, and alpha, and then they start getting success. So,
but I think there's
like
difference
time
between
again.
Confidence and arrogance, and I think arrogance is often presented as alpha versus confidence, and I think those are two separate things that are presented as the same thing, which is part of the problem.
I agree with you. There's nothing attractive about arrogant men. Yeah, sure. But I think going back to your earlier point where you were saying like we just want a guy that's blah 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 blah. I don't think those are actually the things that are utmost priority for the vast majority of women in reality. I think that's the stuff women say they want, but I think there's a discrepancy going on. And again, when I talk to like women who have a high level of self-awareness, like we're talking sex researchers or female dating coaches, they always agree with me. I've never had like actually a debate with any of them about any of this stuff. They're like, yeah, of course, Alex. Of course, women really want a guy who's confident, assertive, dominant. Yeah, of course. I think there's a big discrepancy between what the average woman says she wants and what she really wants.
But I think there's a huge discrepancy between how men say they will treat women and then how they actually treat them. Like
Sure,
men
I agree.
men will sexually objectify women and continue to do so,
Sure.
which is why women get more interest on dating sites. But a majority of those men have absolutely zero interest in the actual personality of that woman. They have the interest in the physicality and the sex of that woman, like having sex with her. That's all they care about. Like a majority of those men.
Well, so there's a lot you said there. Yes, I agree. There's a discrepancy between the way men present themselves and the way they really are. Sure, I agree with you on that. In terms of most guys just want to have sex off dating apps, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that's a misconception. I think it's about 50-50. I think, yeah, like 50% of guys just want to fuck their chick. But I think a solid 50% of the guys are interested in something else. They're just not given that chance. I mean, I've had so many clients. I'll be like, so what do you want, man? You want to just get laid? They're like, no, Alex, I actually want like a girlfriend or I want like whatever. So yeah, I would say it's like 50-50 on that.
Do you ever coach women?
Yeah, I've coached women. Not often, but it happens.
How much would it be for you to coach me? I'm honestly kind of curious.
I mean, I charge the same for anyone, any gender, $250 an hour.
Interesting. Okay. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I wouldn't change the price based on the sex or whatever. It would be the same for anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to take one of these classes just for curiosity reasons.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, we've been going for like 3.5 hours, but I'm totally down to do another one of these with you 100%. I think this was a good discussion. I think there's still a lot more to keep on unpacking. I just don't want to go for too long because it's like 12:30 already.
Oh, fuck me.
All right. So yeah, do you have any closing thoughts or anything?
We're gonna have to dive more into the alpha beta thing.
Yeah, we can definitely do it.
Oh Lord. But I feel like I appreciated the discussion that we had and you being respectful of me. I really, really appreciate that because I've had discussions like this before and been entirely disrespected. And I really appreciate you being very respectful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You were super respectful too. Send me a link of those discussions. I'm kind of curious what happened.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think people should have respectful discussions with other people. That's how I do my podcast and debates and whatnot. But yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming on, Rose. I appreciate your input.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a part 2 and we'll continue with this.
All right.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys, for joining. We're going to do one with Austin and the rest of the guys on Monday. This was 3.5 hours. This was long, but I think there's a lot of good nuggets here. I got to stop going for that long, though, because I feel like most people would not watch on repeat. But yeah, it was interesting. I think I do stick by a lot of my initial assumptions that there's a discrepancy between what women say they want and what women really want, for sure. And I do think biological differences matter, for sure. But anyway, guys, I'm going to pass out, call it a night. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Until next time. Peace.